And welcome you to the council meeting for the 21st of June. Please join me in standing for a karakia led by Councillor Barber.
Te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tona, kia mata ki te uta, kia mata tau ki te wai, e ana te atakura, he te heo, he kuka, he hopu, te hei Māori ora.
Thank you very much. Now, I will just get into some external recognition for council services about the Edmonds Band Rotunda. Right. This morning, I'd like to congratulate the Vertical Capital Delivery team on receiving a gold award in the Heritage and Restoration Project category at the New Zealand Commercial Project Awards. The award is for the restoration of the Thomas Edmonds Band Rotunda. I understand there are a lot of tricky aspects to the reconstruction that provided some challenges, and a lot of collaboration went on to get the end result. Lifting the dome back on required a lot of careful planning and the use of special craneage because of the rotundas so close to the Avon River and large protected poplar trees. The team were able to save some of the original heritage components, but had to replicate the new building components to match them. That included plaster details, repairs to the copper roofing, and concrete columns and balustrades. It is so fantastic that the team have been recognised for this really challenging restoration, that you've made a sympathetic repair that has brought a popular Christchurch icon back to life. So congratulations, Darren and Richard. Is Darren here? He might not be. He was tied up at a meeting, but if Richard could come forward, and I'll congratulate him. Thank you. Well done. And was it as easy as you thought? Oh, no. No, yeah, and no, it is. It is all good people. And to have it back there, just down the road from Otako Orchard, the new orchard thing that's going in there, is it's just hand in glove like the new bridge going across the river. Everything's working out fine, and so well done to you guys. Thank you, mate. Right. So, and the second thing I just want to make a remark is this week is National Volunteer Week. And I do want to shout out to all the volunteers this morning before we kick off, because if it wasn't for volunteers in this city and having the job that I've got, I get to meet so many of them. If it wasn't for them, we would be in deep strife. They are the salt of the earth. This week is a chance to acknowledge all the fantastic work that so many people are doing every day to help people around them. From community cleanups and environmental planting days to Meals on Wheels, animal care, graffiti removal, people are volunteering in sports clubs, art galleries, education and hands-on practical roles, or in governance, administration or IT. In almost any area you can imagine, people are giving their time to the community. On behalf of the city, I'd like to say thank you to their commitment and dedication, and thank them for the people they support, and thank them for the benefits they bring to our community and city. So I'd like to round of applause. Thank you. Righty-ho. So we have no apologies today, but Councillor Goff is on Zoom. Hey James, how are you? Declarations of interest. Councillor Goff has declared an interest in item 5. Before hearing our public forum presenters, I'd like to say a few words in recognition of Volunteer Week. I've just said that. So moving right along. Public participation. Right, for a starter, we have the Citizens Advice Bureau. I'd like to welcome Neil Lancaster and Ronnie Davey from the CAB, who will speak about the volunteer services they provide to communities across Christchurch. Welcome to the table. Good to see you again.
We've been introduced Taranaki o Aotearoa.
Just
Okay. I will sit. So my name is Ronnie Davey. I'm the chair of CABCHAR, which is the Christchurch Area Citizens Advice Bureau, and my colleague Neil. Sorry, I thought you'd introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Neil Lancaster. I've been a member of the Christchurch Citizen Advice Bureau for 12 years. I'm also the national president of our national organisation and chair of the national board.
Okay, so we really do appreciate being here today. Some of you will have used our service. Many of you will know what we do quite well. Even if you haven't used our service, we assume that most of you will be familiar with us because of the recent controversies with Auckland. But we wanted to just share a little bit about what we do. We've sent out some materials that you may or may not have had time to read already in advance, just to give you a bit more background. And we are here today to look towards making closer connections with you and perhaps having some further discussions about how we might work together more fully. Okay, so I'll just find that here. Just a tiny bit about who we are and what we do. Basically, our purpose, as most of you will know, is to actually help individuals understand their rights and their responsibilities as well, and find out what they are entitled to, what they're not entitled to, and what's available to help them and support them when they need that help and support. We're a totally free service. We're a voluntary organisation, as Phil has also acknowledged Volunteer Week. Our clients remain very confidential. Our name is a misnomer, really. We are a universal service. We have clients who come from every part of the community, whether they're migrants, citizens, or whatever. And advice is also a bit of a misnomer because we really are much more concerned to help people help themselves, and we offer options to people. Often at times we do have to give specific help and some advice, but mostly we are trying to open up what they don't know what's available to them. Okay.
The second point there, where we exert a responsible influence in the development of social policies, we do this at a national level, and we have a huge database which we can use in working with government and local government about issues in communities based on the number of people who contact us. So every case that we have is recorded and peer reviewed, and we have it's a very comprehensive database.
So the kinds of things that we deal with, some of you may not know the incredibly broad range of issues that we have coming to us on a daily basis. Basically, we work on phones, we work by email, we have face-to-face, and we also have online chat. So we are fairly versatile in how we try to help our clients. Over the last year, this is a list of the kind of top inquiry types we've had. Legal and government, just to unpack those a little bit for you. Legal and government would include things like separation, dissolution, family court proceedings, and how to work your way around that kind of thing. Any kind of legal issues, wills, probate, EPAs, custody access, and police matters like fines and traffic, parking, all of those kinds of things as well. Crime, legal aid. So there's each of those headings actually has a huge number of different kinds of things underneath it. Where we are unable to give legal advice because we are not lawyers, we put people onto the organisations and things where they can get that expert advice that they do need.
The fourth one's an interesting one, housing and land, because we frequently have calls about the neighbours' trees, about fences, about driveways, and we say, how did you find out about us? And they say, we've been referred by the City Council. So we pick up a lot of that advice where things aren't working in communities and support people there. And I was going to say the number 6 is a increasingly common area where we're looking at employment issues, and it's amazing how many people find themselves in jobs with no employment agreements. We're able to assist people in their employment disputes where they often feel really powerless, and so enable them to resolve their issues.
Each month or so, obviously, the hierarchy of what's important sort of changes. For example, the last month, we've had huge numbers of cases around, in our particular CabChar Bureau, around relationships and legal issues and employment have been the top three. So things do change. But over the last year or so, we've had almost 8,000 clients that we have dealt with in terms of interviews. Each would have an average of about 17 minutes, but sometimes it will take an hour and a half with a client, particularly if we are helping write letters for them and that kind of thing as well. Sometimes as short as 2 or 3 if they want to know how to boil an egg. But I think what we have found over the last few years is our cases get more and more complex and multi-layered. People who are digitally excluded are amongst a lot of our clients, especially from government services or people who struggle with literacy. So we are largely dealing with people who have vulnerabilities and who do need a lot of support. We also run clinics. We have a large number of clinics, immigration, legal, CV, and so forth. And over the last year, we've had at least almost 5,000 clinic clients. So that's a lot of people that we are seeing and supporting.
Ronnie, how much longer have you got, mate?
Sorry?
How much more time do you think you'll need?
A couple of minutes.
Okay, because it is only 5 minutes, but if you can just, yep, carry on. You're doing a good job.
No. There is an assumption that, certainly it's been promulgated, I guess, by the media over time, and some of you will have read the article that we sent around. But ironically, 35% of our clients are under 40. So we have an increasing number of young people coming and using our services, and we have been doing quite a lot of work at the university in training up some of the Year 3 law students as well to try. Okay, so just a little bit of background. This is why we're here, really.
Yep, we run on this Malavanori rag. When you look at the funding that we get in Christchurch, and we're not talking dollars, which we're looking for at the moment, but comparatively, those figures at the bottom there, I think speak for themselves. And what we would really like that as an outcome from this is for us to be able to sit down with a group of representatives from the City Council to look at ways that we can work more effectively, collaboratively in Christchurch. Our funding at the moment means that there's whole areas that we can't work with, and we need to be able to address that. So I think our parting message really is thank you for listening to us, but we would like to continue the conversation in a different forum so that we can work better together in our community.
Okay.
So thank you.
Right, thank you. Sam is really wanting to ask
Thank you. I'll
questions.
make it really quick because I know we're under a bit of pressure. Just in terms of the funding, does that include I know at Fendleton Library, for example, we've got space there which we rent to you at a relatively discounted rate. Does that sort of reflect that funding as well? Or
The funding that is there is the funding that we get from, no, we pay rent there, certainly.
yeah, so it doesn't reflect the in-kind. I'm just trying to understand.
But we don't pay, for example, we pay for our space that we use to work from.
Yes. Yeah.
Some of the rooms we use for meetings and things like that, and board meetings, they are free to the community. So we.
No, that's great. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work.
And thank you for enlightening us on your very important work and your presentation. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have, well done. Yeah. Next we have Glenda Martin from the Volunteering Canterbury, who will share some of the great things volunteers have contributed in recognition of National Volunteer Week.
Kia ora.
Right.
It's a pleasure to be here. Each time at this time of year, and the Mayor's actually done most of my presentation for me this morning, thank you, we celebrate National Volunteer Week across the country, highlighting and celebrating the contribution of volunteers. Why do we do it? 50% of Kiwis volunteer, and within the community sector, 90% of those organisations, community organisations, are entirely volunteer run. The statistics speak for themselves. That's why we recognise volunteers. 2023 has already seen extraordinary voluntary contribution as parts of Aotearoa have grappled with unprecedented run unprecedented run of weather events. So our usual week of recognition has been extended out this year with a big shout out month. Social media campaign running from the top of the North Island right through to Bluff, celebrating volunteering and encouraging people, organisations and individuals to shout out to volunteers. And there's been some great stories shared around the country. For Volunteering Canterbury, I'm just going to see if I can change the slides. Yep. Our main event was on Monday, held here at the Civic Offices, and grateful acknowledgement of the Mayor's presence at that event. 38 recipients received awards for an outstanding voluntary contribution. 11 groups and 27 individuals were amongst those who attended. And their volunteering was from a diversity of roles across every sector. Meals on Wheels and Waves in Littleton, supporting a local art gallery in Oxford, maintaining Coast Guard vessels in Sumner, checking ambulances ready to roll in Akaroa, calling bingo for older people attending a day program in North Canterbury, coaching basketball in Rolleston, supporting the native support keepers at Willowbank, creating beautiful floral creations for the enjoyment of patients and whānau at the Bone Marrow Trust's Ranui House facility, and taking part in regular shifts on various helplines. Those are some of the roles that we heard about on Monday. It's also good to highlight the benefits of volunteers themselves. And volunteering certainly ticks off all the 5 boxes of well-being. And I'm not able to move my screen, sorry.
Yep. You're right, you're doing good.
There we go.
Don't panic.
Supporting volunteering is essential, and to do that, it's important to understand the barriers. And over 45% of people recently identified a lack of time as their reason not to volunteer. Since we can't add hours to days, we need to find solutions. Family volunteer days are one solution that Volunteering Canterbury has come up with, where the whole whānau can get out together, have a bit of fun, and actually make a difference at the same time. Volunteering Canterbury's group volunteering program is another tool in our toolkit. Through this program, which is predominantly utilised by business groups, employers support their teams to make a difference in their communities within the working week. And they're annually gifting about 3,000 hours to our community through that program. So that's on top of the regular volunteering that's happening through Volunteering Canterbury's membership. The contribution in a dollar value to the region is about 11.9 million. That's a government statistic based on minimum wage. Perhaps the most relevant figure, though, is the number of people who are receiving benefits from the volunteering, from that gifting of time of the volunteers. And that figure is 303,000. So 303,000 Cantabrians each year are impacted by volunteering. Volunteering Canterbury's approximately 300 member organisations alone contributes nearly 600,000 hours to the community. This volunteering is what we label formal volunteering, but we know that there's much more volunteering going on which simply doesn't get counted. So those 600,000 hours are, I believe, very likely the tip of the iceberg of mahi aroha taking place across our community. New Zealand's a nation of volunteers. More than 50% of Kiwis volunteer. Over 1 million people are involved in volunteering in the sports sector. And that's why it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to be here today to shout out to volunteers across our region, the unsung heroes, and take the time to shine a light on volunteers and the difference they make. So today, I'm here to give a particularly big shout out to the City Council's volunteers. They're listed up there, the main ones. And also to thank the Christchurch City Council for its continuing support since our inception in 1988 to do what we do here in the city, and alert you to the fact that we are all getting trained up on emergency management. We recognise that with the climate events that are happening, there's a real need for us to take a more active part in helping with the management of volunteers, all those people who turn up to help, and sometimes it's just not the right time. And so to work alongside the council a little bit more closely in emergency management going into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda, and thank you once again. I went down to the awards with you, and that was a pleasure to be at. And the city could not operate without volunteers. So thank you once again for all you do.
I think knackered was the word that you used the other day.
Yeah, thereabouts. Yes. Thank you. Right, next we have Drusilla Kingi-Patterson, who is going to talk to us about Toa Rail and Templeton Hall. Good morning.
Kia ora. I won't be long.
No, you're right.
Where do I sit? Here?
Yeah, wherever you like, mate.
Kia ora. First I've got to say, really excited about the Edmonds Band Rotunda. I actually went there with a boyfriend when it was a restaurant, and I really, really missed it, and I worked on it. And I just love it, and I go past it in the bus and I see when the lights are on. It's just so awesome to have it back.
Absolutely.
And the volunteering, I've done volunteering over 40 years plus. Now I've just been roped in to help my brother with kapahaka. So it doesn't stop. Okay, now, with rail, I just wanted to bring you up to speed. I've got business cards here to be given out. We've actually got a legal name now. I'm still working on the constitution, you can have those. And I'd like to speak about the kaupapa. Our kaupapa is to promote a low emission rail system for Canterbury, Aotearoa, New Zealand, while also promoting historic rail and transport services to support better water infrastructure projects. On Friday, I've actually got a meeting at the the old post office in the centre of town, and I'm looking to go into there regularly once a month to run meetings. I've also put an ad in North Canterbury, and we're looking at probably the Rangiora railway station. I know that a lot of this may not happen in my time, but we've actually been working on this kind of up and down since 2006. I've lost members, so we're starting up again. And so what it is we will be a support group when rail comes to Canterbury and how it's going to work, because I know there's other players and it's going to take a lot of time. And I work in construction, and I'm more concerned about if they roll out Lake Onslow and build a dam, how you're going to get your workers, and I feel that rail would actually open up the markets. I'm actually talking to a graphic company who we're going to roll out within the next 2 to 3 years a map, and it'll be starting from Stewart Island going right through up to the North Island, and then we will highlight areas where there's vintage rail. So it's not all about fast rail as well, and I'm going to bring in some key players. Today is really not the time to go on about all the stuff that I've got to do, but this is just to let you know that that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And I'm working on the constitution, and I'm just about there, but it's just really money, and I've got to work around work.
Yeah, yep.
Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is actually the old Templeton station, Templeton. My husband worked at the prison across the road for 14 years. His ex-wife used to work at the prison at Templeton. There's a lot of people. I met Jordan Majors 2-3 years ago. We spoke on it. We had a 5-minute meeting. I do not know Mr. Majors personally, okay? Even though I did a 20-page report on it and it went to Parliament. I feel that that area would be great for a film museum because you're going to have the animation at Canterbury University. I've actually got 4 film projects. I'm going in the Arts Centre 226, there's no funding. 2 of them could be animation. So there's got all that's happening, and if I get into the grand, we may end up doing filming in there. I've got the permission to do the old bank in Kaipoi. It just comes down to money and logistics and everything else and trying to work around work. All right? So, but I would like a 15, 10 or a half an hour appointment to talk to you about what's going to happen, what yous want for the Templeton side. I did actually meet your father once, and I would like to, because I've actually got a strategy for my filming for the whole of Canterbury, and I've been working on it 20 years. In the Templeton, I even went and had meetings at the RSA with a lot of the community there, and they're isolated, and I feel that something like that would actually be really good for the community over there. Okay, so that's what I would like, if I can, have an appointment with you, Mr. Majors, to actually discuss the Templeton site. And if it's not viable, it's not viable.
No, I'm more than happy to sit down with you. No
Okay.
problem. Thank you very much.
Okay?
Good on you.
Thank you,
Thank you
people.
for coming in. Okie dokie. So we now have Dr. Cheryl Doig, please. Welcome.
Ngā mihi nui kia koutou, ko Cheryl Doig taka ingoa. My name's Cheryl Doig, I'm from Think Beyond and also Ako o Te Tahi, Learning City Christchurch. Apologies from Jessica Halliday, the Director of Te Putahi Centre for Architecture and City Making, who was going to be here but she's still cycling in. But also acknowledging Claire Piper from the Council who's here as support. You may be aware that Sophie Howe is visiting Ōtautahi to speak at the LGNZ conference towards the end of July. And Sophie has just completed 7 years as the first generations, future generations Commissioner for Wales. So it's really exciting that she's coming to New Zealand and that she'll be in our city. So I've snaffled her for the 2 days before the conference because I think her messages are really important for us to be sharing, and that's what I want to share a little bit about. So Think Beyond is hosting her from the 25th and 26th of July, the 2 days before the LGNZ conference, which is at Te Pai. So just a little bit of a snapshot about what she'll be doing in the city, and it is a sort of a pretty tight schedule for her. She'll be spending some time with Ako o Te Tahi, Learning City Christchurch trustees and close associates, talking with Te Mana Ora, the health and all wellbeing team across the country, and also you'll see on the right-hand side of the slide that she will be hosting a Creating Intergenerational Wellbeing talk or Christchurch conversation at the Oxford Baptist Church on the Tuesday evening, and those events are sponsored by Christchurch City Council Sustainability Fund. So I'm sure Jessica would be thanking you for that sponsorship. But that's an open event for anyone in the city to come to free, and I think that's a really important thing for us to be able to share. It's also live streamed, so there are already people from across the country and internationally that are booked in to come to the live stream. The host for the session, the MC, will be Joseph Tualamalai, and it promises to be a really good evening. Hope that you will be able to join us. And on the second day, Sophie will spend some time with Tokona Te Raki and Eru Tarena and the team at Tokona Te Raki. In the afternoon, she'll support a Youth Futures workshop, and that's what I want to spend the rest of my time just bringing to your attention. So the Youth Futures workshop, Impacting Change in Your Future, is being hosted by Think Beyond, Grow Waitaha and the University of Canterbury. From 1 till 4 on the afternoon of the 26th of July, which I think is a day that Council is sitting. It will bring rangatahi from secondary and from the university together to consider youth futures impacting change in your future. You'll see on the slide that Sophie will be sharing examples of what has worked and not worked in the youth space in Wales, and Rangatahi will have time to explore ideas in mixed groups with up to 4 students from each secondary school and a selected group of from UC programs. And from 3 o'clock till 4 o'clock, they'll present back to each other and to an invited group of adult allies to support these ongoing conversations. Within half an hour of the invitation going out to schools, one of the teachers emailed back, "This looks wonderful, our school will be there with bells on, thanks for organising." As a result of the workshop, we would like to engage with Council in Greater Christchurch around key actions and opportunities. At a time when our young people are overwhelmed and for some the future can look grim, we want to act as allies to discuss positive futures with a focus on growing trust, agency and hope. And we hope to use futures thinking approaches to explore new opportunities. So the ask from you is to attend the city conversation if you can, but certainly to amplify it to others that you think might be interested in coming. To spread the word about the youth feedback session. If you know of any adult allies that would be good for us to personally invite to that last hour, please let me know. Engage with us in the youth futures after the event. So there's an ongoing conversation that we've already been talking about with Greater Christchurch as well. Ask different questions, be curious and lead the way. And the big ask, I guess, is to engage in intergenerational wellbeing as a way of thinking rather than just a youth portfolio. There's so many opportunities, so just open for any questions.
Thank you very much. You've unfortunately used up all your time, but thank you very much for bringing it to our attention.
Thank
That's
you.
very much appreciated. Thank you. Okie dokie. So now we have Kevin, who will speak about the need for safer pedestrian crossing Copper Ridge across Horsell Junction Road. I was actually out there the other day with Andre.
Morning.
Morning, mate.
You were there yesterday, I believe it was, to have a look at the crossings at Horsell Junction Road. I'm here speaking on behalf of my daughter, who was hit by a car doing 70 in Horsell Junction Road. The fact that the car hit her at 70, the driver reversed, came back, police attended and everything else. The problem we have at Copper Ridge is Copper Ridge is a new subdivision on the east side of Longhurst and Knightstream. We have the school in Knightstream. The speed limit from Horsell Junction Road all the way down is 50, or supposedly 50. Now, we built, because I'm part of the construction industry, we built the skateboarding park and the rugby fields, which we didn't build them for adults, we built them for children. But the children can't cross the road because of the speed of the cars going through. They also have to go to school. So my question is, when we gave consent to build Longhurst, Knightstream and Copper Ridge, did anyone not see the future of the speed limits, crossings, how to reduce the accidents? See, my daughter's lucky, but who's going to put their hand up and say when a child dies, oh, we could have fixed that 3 years ago? There isn't going to be a person who's going to do it. The reason I'm here as well is because Kiangiora is going to build state housing, which is also going to bring more to Horsell Junction Road because they're actually using the same exit and entrance as Copper Ridge. So the problem we have is, one, the speed limit. We're giving consent for a number of housing and not looking at the infrastructure and how the infrastructure impacts as we keep throwing Lego bricks into the equation. Now, my daughter was 7 at the time. She's now 10. And the road is exactly the same. The speed is exactly the same. There are parents that drop their kids to school between the hours of, well, the school doesn't actually open, or the children are not allowed in until 8:10. So you have, on average, say 30 children around the vicinity, around the football field. A ball runs into Horsell Junction Road. A child doesn't have the mindset to stop and look. They're going to run to get their ball. A car doing 70 has no chance in hell in stopping in enough time. So you have a dead child on your hands. So the time frame that we take to fix something needs to be addressed, because email I sent on the 30th of August 2022 was replied to me on the 16th of September. And all I am is a number. That's all we are, a number. Until someone dies. Is that what we're waiting for? How long is it going to take? And the only reason I'm here is because of Kiangahora's state housing being built in Copper Ridge, plus the fact that I needed to bring this up. My time's up.
No, thank you, but Andre has got a question, because he and I both went there the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, particularly for staff. So thank you very much, Kim, for taking the time to come in. Are we able to get some advice on what can be done around here? Just that the important point here is that we've got the speed surveys around there, and the speed that Kevin's daughter was hit at is not particularly a unique speed. It's actually a very common speed to be driving through them. We've got the speed surveys which actually tell us that about 15 in every 100 cars is doing around that speed where Kevin's daughter was hit. All that's in the pipeline is changing the speed limit around school times, but that's not going to help anyone get across the road outside of school time or even to their local park on a weekend. So it'd be good to get some advice on what can be done about the infrastructure itself. And also just worthwhile noting that the night stream school students came to speak to our community board about this issue a few months ago as well. So any advice would be much appreciated.
We've also
Absolutely.
forgotten the rugby matches that are played there on the weekends.
Yeah.
So we built the infrastructure for the community to enjoy, but you can't. So what was the point?
So I will seek staff advice on what to do. I've got Andre and I looked at where there's a little build out on the park side and a refuge in the middle, but there's no build out on your side to make the road a bit safer.
Correct.
as well as the speed. So thank you for your presentation, and we'll look into it.
If at any point in time you come down, look me up. I've been in construction for the last 45 years, so I know what I'm talking about.
Good man. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, so now we move on to deputations by appointment. Christchurch International Airport. Is Christine here, please?
Tēnā koutou. So my name is Jesse Amer, and I'm a planner representing Christchurch International Airport, and I helped with the preparation of the airport submission on the Autokaikino Stormwater Management Plan.
Atamarie, my name is Nancy Vance, and my colleague Christine unfortunately couldn't be here today, but she and I helped prepare the submission as well, and myself in particular, the guideline in Appendix G for basin design.
Thank you.
So the airport would firstly like to thank the Christchurch City Council and Paul Dixon specifically for recognising that bird strike is an issue in this catchment, and appreciates the collaborative approach undertaken to integrate the issue and the bird strike management guidelines into the stormwater management plan. So bird strike is when a bird or flocks of birds collides with an aircraft and is a key threat to the safe operation of Christchurch International Airport. It can cause damage to aircraft, which compromises safety and in many instances can force an emergency landing. It is a particular concern in the Otokaikino catchment, which lies immediately to the north of the Christchurch Airport runway. So bird strike risk resulting from bird attracting land uses, such as stormwater basins, is made of three main elements. The first being shared airspace between birds and planes, and this can take place up to 13 kilometres away from the airport. The second is the bird species, and in particular their size and their behaviour. And based on those two elements, identification of where there is a potential collision with aircraft. So given Otokaikino's location directly within flight paths and its close distance to the airport, planes and birds will share airspace. Therefore, it is critical for the airport's safety and function that bird strike risk within the Otokaikino catchment is appropriately managed. Now, the airport cannot manage bird strike risk on its own. The key outcome that the airport seeks through this process is collaboration with partners, including the council and developers who want or need to construct stormwater basins to ensure that they are designed to mitigate bird strike risk. There are several factors that can be incorporated into stormwater basin design to mitigate this risk, and the airport has experts who can work with partners to achieve this outcome. Just to be clear, the airport doesn't oppose the development of stormwater basins within this catchment. It just wants to ensure that these basins are designed appropriately to mitigate bird strike risk. So to kickstart these conversations, the airport considers that the plan needs to, firstly, recognise the significance of bird strike risk in the catchment, and secondly, to clearly communicate bird strike risk and how it should be managed to users. So through the airport's collaboration with the council, the plan contains provisions relating to and guidelines on designing stormwater basins in a way that mitigates bird strike risk. This is a great outcome. Additionally, as set out in our submission, the airport would like to see the mitigation of bird strike risk elevated into the objectives and policies at the front end of the document to recognise its significance, to draw it to the user's attention, and also just to provide context to the more detailed references to bird strike risk further in the document. These changes will ensure that conversations about bird strike risk can take place at the appropriate time and ensure managing this risk is as straightforward as possible for the developers of stormwater basins within the catchment. Overall, the airport considers the plan as a product of hard work by the council, particularly Paul Dixon, and the airport, and is a milestone in the ongoing relationship between the airport and council on bird strike risk. The airport looks forward to continuing to work collaboratively with the council to reduce bird strike risk. Thank you all for your time and for the opportunity to speak to our submission. And Nancy and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Pauline?
Yeah, thank you. I'm interested in what design features can be used to minimise the risk of bird strike, and also would any mitigation add considerable cost to building a basin? Do you know?
It's a good question. Risks differ, so it's not necessarily the geographic location of the basin in proximity to the airport. There are variables such as standing water, the gradient of the banks of the stop bank, and the particular vegetation used. We look to decrease diversity of plants in these stormwater basins, reduce plants with berries, seeds, nuts, fruit, habitat, ones that provide habitat for birds. And even soil improvements can attract invertebrates that specific birds like to eat. So there are design guidelines around that. We've got an indicative cross-section in the appendix and a list of plant species that the airport encourages use of in this instance.
Right, that's really interesting. And have council staff, are they open to your requirements?
Yes, yeah,
Great.
no, it's been a really great process, and yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
And we just encourage people to, when they're designing the basin, to come and talk to us, because as I say, we've got the people who can help with the specifics, because each basin is different.
Bird strike is mentioned in different places in the district plan, and this appendix kind of brings it together in one place, which is great.
Thank you very much. I'm sure our guys will talk to you guys, your guys.
Continue talk.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Okay, next we have deputations related to the organics processing plant, item 5 on the agenda. And I'd start by welcoming Burwood Glenwood Coastal Community Board Deputy Chair Jackie to the stage, please.
Good morning, everyone. Just given there's limited time, this is more in bullet form than storytelling this morning, so I'll plough right on into it. I've read and understand the report, including all the limitations.
Sorry, before you start, I am more, because this is a very sensitive and passionate issue, I'm more than happy to give people a bit more time on this. So
I'll speak slower then, thanks.
No, well, and here we are starting the clock, and if you run over, it's not, because this is very important to us and all of us. So please start again.
Thank you. I will start again. I have read and I understand the report, including all the limitations and restrictions that prevent an immediate closure of the organics processing plant. But I would like to remind everyone here that the organics processing plant has never been fit for purpose, it has never been compliant, and I doubt that it ever will be. This situation has been forced on the people of Bromley by the Christchurch City Council and Environment Canterbury, and they have never had a choice in this. They have been treated appallingly by the governing bodies involved. This report about mitigation should have been commissioned a year ago at the time that it was decided the plant should close. It was remiss of the Christchurch City Council not to do that. You dropped the ball and you've cost the people of Bromley another year of living with this odour. I understand that consultation is a requirement, but whilst necessary, it will only serve to add further delays to the closure of this plant. This too should have been initiated a year ago and would have been completed by now. The problems with this consultation is that it is highly unlikely that people who have not lived in this stench will be agreeable to a rates increase for the disposal of what is in fact their own green waste. To that end, I would like to remind you of the Local Government Act 2002, Section 78(1). A local authority must, in the course of its decision-making process in relation to a matter, give consideration to the views and preferences of persons likely to be affected by or have an interest in the matter. The people of Bromley have a stronger interest and are indisputably impacted more severely than anyone else. To that end, it is not okay for the majority to impose their will on a minority that has well and truly been affected by the organics processing plant. I refer now to item 7.6 in the report on your agenda, where it states that this item is a significant decision due to costs, policies, levels of service, and environmental considerations. Nowhere does it state that this item is a significant decision because of the impact of the lives of the people of Bromley that you see here today. These people are not dollar figures on a piece of paper. They are people whose lives and well-being have been impacted by poor decision-making by the Christchurch City Council over 14 years. Yet their lived experience, their stress and angst and trauma does not appear to be noted as a significant factor in the decision process, and that is wrong. Their experience of living with the stench should be the most important, significant factor. It's also noted that resource consent would be needed for additional trucks to go to Cape Valley. Cape Valley has already consent to receive the waste, so that means it's a fairly simple matter of getting consent from Huranui District Council for extra truck movements. This should have been sought already. You've been aware that this resource consent would be most likely needed for some time. Waiting for the outcome of the consultation will just add additional delays. If application for that resource consent hasn't been started, it should be started today. There's no excuse for waiting on that. In spite of all the legal and legislative limitations placed on you right now, I know that individually and collectively, for the most part, you accept that Bromley residents have been treated appallingly and that they deserve better. It's time for the Christchurch City Council to step up. It's time for you to start working proactively, not reactively, on this issue. It is time for you to do the right thing by the people of Bromley. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, you have got time for one question if anyone wants one. No, that's good. I'm sure others may use a wee bit more time.
That's great.
And
Happy to hand it
and they're
on
more
to
than
them.
welcome to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, righto, next up we have Bruce King, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
I think this is my fourth or fifth presentation to this council to do with the OPP, or as I call it, the odour producing plant, which it's been doing since its opening approximately 14 years ago. The CCC owns the consent, which is CRC 080301.1, to operate the plant. The plant operator and builder has been allowed to continually break the consent, which is living earth. And the consent states in clause 27, the discharge to the air shall not cause odour or dust which is offensive or objectionable beyond the boundary of the site in which the consent is exercised. This consent is broken daily, whether we live in the predominant wind, which is the northeast, or over in Mount Pleasant, etc. One side of the city is accepting or receiving the dust and the stink. ECAN in 2021 found the main source of offensive and objectionable odour in the Bromley area is the OPP. This City Council has objected to that and spent thousands of dollars trying to prove the ECAN wrong. The City Council was given a period of time to get the OPP operating within the consent conditions. The day this period of time expired, the CCC was issued with an abatement notice. During the period when the CCC was given time to get the OPP operating consent conditions, it's spent considerable amounts of ratepayer money trying to prove the OPP wasn't the source of the offensive odour. More ratepayers' money wasted. If the CCC had just spent this money on relocating the OPP, it could have saved millions of dollars and relieved the ratepayers living in the wind shadow of the OPP years of anguish and health problems caused by the nuisance smell, dust carried bioaerosols, black mould dust, and various wind-carried spores from composting materials, including Legionnaire's disease. The main effect on people is the continuation for 14 years for those who have been living there the whole time, which I have, the mental effects the offensive odours have caused. As for the 3 to 5 years to fix the problem, as stated at the last community liaison group meeting, I think that's a joke, seeing we were promised a year ago it would be closed and shifted. 1 year ago, just over 1 year ago, it was 14 months in this very room, that was stated. But it was put out for tender, and the council allocated 20 million to rectify the problem. The tenders came back at approximately twice double that figure. So much for the City Council's department being able to research what the things are going to cost to fix. I think that's shows a totally inactive or inadequately trained and educated on how to find the price of things. It's time to close the operation now, not in the 3 to 5 years, and save the ratepayers more consultation fees. Oh, sorry, I've got a bit wrong there. It should be closed right now and stop the mental anguish before the spring-summer season starts, because it's going to be another stinker, as we have had most of the winter, or so-called autumn and winter starting now. It's been stinking very, very frequently. One of the original tenders stated in the document the plant shouldn't have been built there in the first place. And you can prove that by looking up the documents that the council has got. And it was stated because of where it is and the wind would cause the problems to the people living by. And one interesting point that Jackie just raised, consent is not approved for the trucking of any waste to Cape Valley. The consent was issued for it being trained on train carriages to just south of Whiteborough, north of Ambley. That's the original consent. So there is no consent for any trucking of waste or green material to Cape Valley. So it's been operating illegally all that time, and it was only done because the railway advised the council it would be cheaper to use trucks, because the railway didn't want to fix up a siding where it should have been fixed to allow this facility to be built and carry out the shifting from the city council, from the city to the siding up north of Ambley there, and then on truck from there to Cape Valley. And you will all know that because that document was delivered to you prior to the meeting 1 and a bit years ago, and you've all got it because I've seen a copy of the letter. And the other point is that people were objecting last time about losing their special green thing that comes from the government. I know that has now been told that as long as you are building a new plant, that green subsidy will still come to the City Council. So that objection, which we had dancing chairs here a year and a bit ago, 13 people from the wastewater and management presented arguments that it shouldn't close. What a joke. And when you had a head of the department go to meetings and say to people that in that meeting, I don't care what the people of Bromley think, it's staying where it is. And that is pretty much word to word from what people have told me she said to people who work in this council. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. Right. Vicky, please.
Familiar face. Don't really want to be back here, but here I am again. Thank you for hearing me. Nice to see you. Rinse and repeat. Apologies from Andrew Walker. He is working as I should also be working today. The immediate closure of the OPP plant to me means regained health. Here I am emotional again. Sorry about that, but this is me, talking about me, how it affects me. I've been the most unwell this year as I've ever been in my whole entire life. For pneumonia in January, lung infection in May, now asthma and shingles. I can't live the way I want to on my property and in my community. The plant pollutes my air daily. I can't use my HRV or open the windows to ventilate my home. I can't go out for my daily routine walks. I can't hang my washing outside. I can't go out in the garden to tend or enjoy it. I can't sit on my porch in the sun. My grandchildren can't walk to school. They can't play outside or in their local park. I feel trapped and a prisoner in my own home, held captive to a foul odour. It does weigh heavily on my health, my life and my enjoyment of life. I live in a residential zoned area. You zoned it residential. Living Earth is a privately owned contractor. It is making money at the expense of our clean air. Its contract is expiring in January 24, and I have zero confidence in them. They have tried, as has their predecessor, to minimise and stop the smell and dust they produce. The liaison group has met with you for years and years of our lives, meeting with you and being given lip service. You all know the plant isn't coping with the amount coming to it. You give us graphs and timelines, but it still stinks and pollutes our everyday lives. Living Earth has breached its consents 12 times in January alone this year. They are not complying on the current site despite numerous attempts. The consent states, smell and dust must not leave its boundaries. The council should just stop wasting money fighting ECAN and accept ECAN's findings and close the plant immediately. I'm afraid that if this is delayed, that the rates will go up further for the new stadium and the new council won't be able to afford to move the new plant. They could reverse the closure. I want a time frame you have to adhere to. I refer to Agenda 1.1, Nature of Decision.
In May 22, you said closure will be, quote, 3 to 5 years, and now a year later, 4 to 6. We need transparency. You say you need more consultation. I feel we've had enough. However, you have the power. If you must consult, make it 2 weeks consultation like it was for the extra 150 million you needed for the new stadium. Oh yes, another recommendation, reducing the transport emissions. I see it's pretty straightforward. Stop bringing it in from Sticks Mill and Waymack until the plant is moved. I really want your decision today to be close it immediately. I want engagement and commitment to be a good neighbour. So our health and lives and enjoyment is not being put on the too hard pile. Fresh air shouldn't be a privilege for those privileged. Just make consents, and I know you can fast track them too. Just do it.
Thank you. Well done. Well done, you. Has anyone got any questions? No. Thank you very much for coming in, Vicky. Okie doke. So next we've got Kathy, please.
Hi, my name is, I don't need a microphone, I have a very loud voice and I like to be heard. My name is Kathy Baker. I've been a resident of Bromley community for 20 years and I'm a teacher at the local Bromley school. Enough is enough. We as a community have not been listened to over our constant complaints. We're treated like second-class citizens because we live in Bromley. Doesn't matter. We all pay our rates, I say, and I expect the same consideration that every other ratepayer in the city gets. We do not get that. Why should I even bother paying my rates, I asked you? Let's stop all the talk, the consultations, the meetings. It's going to cost $41 million, I hear, to close the plant. Give me a truck and a digger, I'll do it for $20 million. Quote from the last council article, the well-being of the Bromley community is very important to the council and we are constantly reviewing the operations on site and we will continue to make necessary changes as required to ensure the odour is not offensive and objectionable. Lynette Ellis. Obviously this hasn't happened, surprise, surprise. What a joke. We spent money sending scouts out into the community for 10 minutes to walk around and smell the smell. 10 minutes. Is that all we're worth? The scouts came back with a report. They couldn't smell the smell. Surprise, surprise. Our health has been hugely impacted at Bromley School. Our numbers of absentees is huge. Kids with sore tummies, chest infections, coughs, asthma. I, being a fit, healthy person, a New Zealand representative, has now got an inhaler. For goodness sake, why would I need that? Some days we cannot let our children play outside. We don't know what is happening inside their lungs. We need to provide a much cleaner health for our children. Flies in our classrooms. We are riddled with flies. We have parents who won't open their houses. We have children who can't walk to school. While we're on a health hazard, I want to bring up the car crushing plant, which is another area we'll talk about another day. My question to you all is, what will you do immediately to help the Bromley residents? I have 2 children who now would like to read to you. Speak into here. Big voice.
Mr. Major, my name is Phoenix and this is Cara. I am 8 years old and Cara is 9 years old. We go to Bromley School. We are not very pleased with the smell from the poo pumps and compost. It has been getting out of hand.
We can smell it at school and at home. It smells like rotten cheese and fish. Can you please tell them to fix it right away? A lot of people cannot open their windows and people cannot go outside. Thank you from Phoenix and Cara.
And now we'll now hear from Irie. big loud voice, sorry.
Dear Mayor, I am a student from Bromley and sick of playing in the smell because we don't like to play in it. Some of my classmates have asthma and it's horrible for our health. It's not just at school, it's near our home where there are newborn babies and sick families. Sometimes we miss learning and have fun trips because of the smell. We want the smell to go away. Thank you for allowing us to speak.
Mr. Mayor, I have letters from the children that you can read tonight in bed. It will make interesting reading.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Any questions, anybody? I think bringing the children in was very wise. It's very good to hear it from their mouths.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, mate. Good on you. Now we have Katrina Visser, please. So just so I'm on the right track, Vicky, Katrina's your
Katinka's my neighbour.
neighbour. So what you smell, she smells. So it's
Well, yeah.
Not necessarily, because we have apertures or whatever you want to call doors and windows and that in different places.
Mhm.
Right, I'm here to tell you that you must make the right decision and close the OPB plant today. Be the good neighbour, as it says in your literature, and lead by example. The foul stink that this plant emits isn't allowed, but somehow this plant gets away with it. Living Earth is not complying with its consents. That stink is not allowed to leave its own area. Do I have to spell it out to you? Where I live is not its area. I don't care if you have too much of the wrong stuff or if part of the plant is broken. If the plant can't cope, it should cease to exist. Or it seems as it can't be fixed, let's face it. How many years have they been trying? 15? And it's not getting any better. It's worse, way worse since the end of last year. This is so not right. Listen to the people living in its wind shadows. What or who gives this plant the right to pollute my air? And get this, I'm even being made to pay a whole lot more for it in this year's rates. What's right about that? No one wants to come and visit a moody, scratchy, one-track-minded person's place with every likelihood of having to breathe that expensive foul air. Would you come and visit? No, I don't think so. I've actually lived in the area since the early 80s. Before I moved to where I am now, I lived in Hay Street, so I've been around a long time. I even took part in the monitoring odours way back then, so I knew what I was doing when I moved, choosing to stay in the area. The odour, as you keep calling it, has gotten worse. I'm told I can complain or moan about it on Smelt It, their Snap Send and Solve It. Or I can phone the council customer service line. Oh, and there's ECAN too. I'm so over these methods. E can't or E won't. The enforcement period's taken age anyway. It's like 58 days. If you phone the council, you can't even get through half the time. Who has the time to wait for that? There are people working in positions that I would never wish to be in, but they are in them. Someone is and should have done more by now. Well, now it's just too late. Enough is enough. Do the right thing and close that damn stinking plant right now. And if the council can't find anywhere else for it to go, that just proves to me it can't be here either.
Do you want to read that?
No, I sent that to Yanni, so everyone's read that, haven't they?
Yeah, it's been circulated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, so, yeah, we've got that. Yep.
Are there
thank
any
you.
questions? I'm sure I've taken up my time.
No. You got questions, right?
No, I'm sure everyone is very aware of what you just stated, and for everyone as well.
I hope so, because I'll tell you what, it's bloody awful having to live in that crap. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you for making the time. Okay, Jeffrey King, please.
All right, I'd just like to bring some facts to the noggin. 14 months ago, some people round this table, and don't put your heads down, voted to keep this plant open. You haven't read any of the documentation. In 2007, the Becker Consultancy report mentioned odour problems with these types of industries. Nobody in this building had any clues at all to the facts of what these sites, composting sites, do to people. Clause 3.18. Does the biofilter have a roof? Well, it doesn't. We don't have a biofilter. It's just a tray of bark. It's useless. It's 100-year-old technology. And you've paid, what, $40 million already, and you're going to pay another 40-odd million. Valen Barrett, a respected ECAN staff member in 2015, did a survey of industry and residents, and stop playing with the cord and pay attention. I'm listening to you, Jeff. Did a survey in the Bromley area of residents and of businesses. 83% said it affected them. The stench, the odour. 215, Becker Consultancy reported, and you should have read this, clauses 3.1, 3.3, 3.32, 3.4, 3.6, all mention the odour problem. And that was 215, and it had been open about 5-6 years. And 6.2, the bio filter upgrades. They were never done, they never have been done. We've got the old 1930s technology still in place. Then what about the 2004 Clean Air Act? Have any of you read that? I don't think so. And I think you should turn round and read it, because the staff won't read it. The 215 WorkSafe Act. Have you read that? No, you haven't. Because clauses 40.2F, 43.2D and 47, which suggest to me that the plant should have been closed. It breaches government law. The 1991 Resource Management Act, breached daily for the past 14 years. Notice of non-compliance should have been given by ECAN, but they are useless, they are toothless, they don't want to do anything. That would mean, if convicted, it would have been a $600,000 fine and $10,000 per day for continuing the offence. So we've got 365 days times 14, over 5,000 times. $10,000, work that out. You've already spent over a $60-odd million on this plant with consultants. Simpson-Grierson document, the legal document between Living Earth, who conned the council, and this council, was updated in 2015, and by Becker, but it's still the same. The clause 3.9.2, which clearly states no odour over the boundary. That has not and never been altered since day one. All right, but still happens. What about the ECAN and the CCC climate change statement? Some of you sit round here, greenies, and all about the climate change. This thing's pumping methane into the atmosphere like there's no tomorrow, like a herd of 6,000 dairy cows. But you don't want to know. You vote to keep it open. And then we come to the consents. Clause 10B, to operate under negative pressure. It fails. Bruce mentioned that. 27, discharge to air shall not cause odour or dust which is objectionable beyond the boundary of the site applicable on which the consent exercise and falls. Now we've had managers, 5 managers in 14 years. Mark Christensen, he saw it was hopeless and he moved on to Becker. Then we had Tim Joyce. He left St Andrews and went to the road tunnel, ticket toll, sold tickets, came to the council, and the next minute he's up the bloody top, a few years later, running the waste and water. Then he left. Well, we had Sue Winter and...
Just keep staff names just
Yeah,
back a wee bit if you wouldn't mind,
okay.
please.
Then we had Sue Winter and Tim Joyce. They told us to suck it up. Without using names, the lady who has left, she told us if we didn't like it, we could sell our houses and move on. Well, I move on at night in the summer because I've got to go and sleep in the lay-by up in Sumner and in New Brighton to get out of the bloody stench so I can sleep. But it doesn't bother you, does it? No. Then we had, following that, Tim Joyce was John Mackey, and he was moved on by this outfit. Then we had Helen. She's away on leave.
Jeffrey, just back it off a little bit,
All
please.
right. And now the poison chalice has been handed on to a man from Parks and Reserves, the poor bugger. I sincerely hope that you vote to close this down today. Think of the people. It affects from 16 community hubs about 80-odd thousand people. And it's in 2 councillors' constituency area, and you vote to keep it going. Shame on you. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, we actually have one more. Doug Williams, please. Thank you.
And thank you for the extra time, sir.
Welcome, Doug.
Yeah, good morning. Do I have to push anything? Or?
Now, as long as those lights are green, you're in good shape.
No, like Doug Williams is my name. I don't live in Bromley. I live in Apawa. But since early 2021, I've been trying to engage with the council because my brother and I have a solution to your problem. And so, from the way I see it, there's 3 problems. As these people here have come to talk about, excuse me, the smell, the flies, but most importantly, the perception. Now, at the moment, it doesn't really matter what you do, that perception will always be there. Now, that's the problem. But, so, I have a solution to that, and the only thing that we want, my brother and I, is some kind of protection for our idea. So what we bring to solve this problem, we will get the credit for. And for the last maybe more than a year, I've been trying to engage with the council, the administrative side of it, and it's just been so bad faith engagement. And it was only by luck that I realised this meeting was on today. that I've come and say there's two things that I've come to talk about: the solution and what we want in return, which is not unreasonable, and also the way that we've been stonewalled. And as you can see from these people, it's pretty important. Like, something so important that they would bring little kids along to talk, and people that are sick, the council should be engaging with everybody, and at least in good faith. So that's basically what I've come to talk about, the fact that we have a solution, right? It's fractions of the cost that have been suggested, and like basically nobody listens to us.
So you have tried to talk to factions of council, but
Yeah,
you've
of
got,
course.
So
Of
and
course.
you haven't. So I will get you in front of someone who knows a damn sight more about it than me.
Yeah, that's
Is that all
fine.
right?
Yeah, but the
Okay.
first thing we want, like, is just some kind of agreement that what we bring will belong to us, that it won't be just taken and we won't get any credit. Now, I'm not talking about money, I'm not talking about anything. I'm just talking about the fact we want the credit for what we produce.
Okay.
That's all we want. You know, there's nothing to do with the science of it or anything else. And nobody will do that.
Okay.
So-
well, I will get you in front of the right people.
Yeah.
And I'll come along as well.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Tim.
G'day, how are you?
Yeah.
Hey, just for my, and you don't have to obviously any detail. Is it a product is it like a patent protection, or is it just?
No, but the problem is with a patent, everything's got to be innovative. But it's a lot of combinations of things, which I just don't want to go down the patent way. And so
Hard to explain if you're in wanting protection to get.
No, I'll give you a good example. Is the fact that I engaged with you about the flooding, and I go and finally I got to go to a meeting with the council, and there was an engineer and an English guy and a lovely lady that was a communication, and the engineer was just writing down flat out the solution, right? And before I went there, the council said they had no solution to the flooding apart from dredging and building bunds. And I explained in Tokyo and in Amsterdam some of the things that are being done, like they store the water at high tide and then pump it out at low tide in Tokyo, and then lo and behold, afterwards they've built this one in Linwood, and I think, well, before I went there, they had no idea to do this, and now I go there. But hey, I don't mind that. I just want the credit for it. So that's what I'm talking about. And it's pretty hard to argue against these people, you know. And so.
Okay. Pauline.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Are you talking about an interim temporary mitigation or a long-term solution?
Well, it's basically a long-term solution, but it can be moved. You know, it's not like major. Like the problem you've got there is you've built those curing houses, which are sort of bricks and mortar infrastructure, but you can't move it. So you've got like a white elephant there. Whereas what we can do is provide something that can be moved.
Okay.
And it and can be set up somewhere else. And it will stop the smell, and it will stop the dust, and it will stop the flies. Whether it stops the perception, I can't say.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming in.
Yeah,
Very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Good on you.
Thank you.
Right, now we will have a cup of tea for 15 minutes before we get into, we have no petitions today, so after our break we will move into item 5, the interim curbside organics management options report. So we'll have 15 minutes to get our act together, and see you soon. So we now move on to item 5. And I'd ask Brent and David to come. Oh, you've got 3 of you. So far away. Introduce and far away, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. For those who don't know me, my name's Brent Pizzi. I'm one of the authors of the report. To my right is Keegan Clutterbuck, who was also one of the authors. He is or was contract manager, is that correct?
Contract and project lead for the resource recovery team.
And to the far right is Dr. Steve Pearce. Dr. Pearce is a director at PDP Consultancy, who the council has been relying on for independent assessment of the odour being generated from the organics processing plant. We have prepared, Mayor, a very short summary of the council report. And I would like to highlight, before running through this in detail, that there isn't a great deal of dispute between council staff or the content of this report and what you've heard from the deputations this morning. It's precisely because of the concerns and the impacts that the organics processing plant's offensive and objectionable odour has been having at times that the council decided last year that it preferred shifting it. And the decision recommended in this report is about what to do until the council can shift it. And that period is until roughly 2027, 2029. The staff recommendation in the report is not to continue operating at the site with the current controls in place. The staff recommendation is to engage with the community and do something quite different. We've had an opportunity to see some amendments to those resolutions that I understand you're going to propose, Mayor, with the Deputy Mayor, and have no issues with those. So just to recap the context, how we got here to having this report and this decision for you to make today. The organics processing plant processes roughly 55,000 tonnes of curbside organics collected across the city each year. It composts it at the OPP site, and it also composts organic waste brought to that site from the Waimakariri District Council. And it does so in, under a resource consent for discharges to air that ECAN has issued to this council. So that's a resource consent to discharge odour to air. But there's a condition that some of the deputations have highlighted, that that odour shall not be offensive and objectionable beyond the boundary of the site. Now, it was precisely because of the issues that the deputations have spoken about today that the council resolved last year in April and May that it agreed in principle to the relocation of the organics processing plant to another site. And the council's been going through a very detailed process to procure opportunities to do that. And that's why I've mentioned an interim period until 2027, 2029, because it's going to take some time for that alternative to be first chosen by the council later this year and then become operational. So when the council decided last year that it agreed in principle to the relocation of the organics processing plant to another site, it also resolved to continue composting at the current site with current controls until that new facility or redevelopment of the current one is operational. Now, those current controls haven't always worked. There's no dispute about that. There have been offensive and objectionable odours beyond the boundary of the site. And I'd like to refer you to the report. Give me a moment. Paragraphs 4.12 to 4.14 of the staff report. Environment Canterbury enforcement officers have assessed offensive and objectionable odours beyond the boundary in December, January, and through to March of this year. And also this council has engaged Dr. Pearce and his colleagues at PDP to do their own independent monitoring. So this council's proactive monitoring has identified that there has been offensive and objectionable odour beyond the boundary. On further dates that hadn't already been identified by Environment Canterbury, and they were in February, April, and the most recent 13th of May this year. So it's precisely because of those issues and the impact that they're having on the community that this council in late March requested Keegan and his colleagues to investigate any options to get off the site sooner than that 2027-2029 date that the council resolved on last year. And since then, in those 2 months, staff have been doing everything they can to find alternatives and recommend them back to you. And that's what this report does. It does identify options to get off the site sooner than 2027-2029, and it proposes a way to do that. Just turning to some of the detail of that investigation in the report. The waste management team looked at options all around the country. Appendix A to the report has a map attached that shows something like 20 different sites around the country where there's composting or worm farms or anaerobic digestion or landfills that the team has investigated as options if the council was to close the site, because to state the obvious, if the waste has to go somewhere if the council closes the site, where are the organics going to go to? That needs to be sorted out before the council can close the site. So the team has looked at all those options around the country, and I think it was Appendix B to the report is a long list of the type of processing opportunities that the team have investigated. And then option C, a short list of those. Bottom line, the options are to find an alternative composter or worm farm or community initiatives. In other words, continue processing the green waste or dispose of it to landfill or some combination of those, or, and the council can't predetermine its decision making here, stay at the current site with more significant improvements. So they're the options that the report recommends the council engage with its communities on. Just talking about those in a little bit more detail, and this is summarising the content of the report. The team hasn't identified any composters anywhere in the country. We currently have both physical capacity and approvals under the RMA to take all of the curbside organics for composting right now. There are 3 operators in the North Island and none who have been identified in the South Island who are able to take part of the mixed curbside organics. And those 3 in the North Island are mentioned on this slide. Ecogas can take some, Envirofert can take some, and a worm farm can take some. So that would mean shipping that to the North Island. But it's not dealing with all of the 55,000 tonnes approximately that the council generates each year from its curbside organics. So if the council was to use those operators, it would need to decide what is it going to do with the rest. Is it going to dispose of it at Cape Valley landfill, continue to process some of it at the OPP or something else? There are resource consent delays, as some of the deputations have highlighted, in getting resource consent and variations to resource consents. They need to be in place before any alternative operators can accept the council's waste. As a preliminary, very much a preliminary recommendation from council staff, because as you know, there's been no engagement with the community on this yet, staff aren't too keen on sending the curbside organics to non-local composters, and by that I mean in the North Island. And that's because of costs, both financial and environmental. Okay, option 2 to engage with the community on is disposal at Cape Valley landfill. The waste management team have investigated, as I said before, landfills all around the country, and the Cape Valley one is the only one who have said that they have capacity to accept the council's curbside organics in their landfill, but don't have resource consent in place yet to be able to take all of it. On their very rough estimates on the current consent conditions to do with truck movements, they might be able to take the equivalent of 12 to 18,000 tonnes of the council's curbside organics at this stage. And they'd need a variation of their resource consent if they were to take it all. And just there is a resource consent to accept truck movements at Cape Valley. That might have started off as being an intent for it to be by rail, but the current resource consent authorises truck movements. So the council will have a decision to make about what to do if it does prefer disposal at Cape Valley, what to do until Cape Valley might have a resource consent in place to accept all of the curbside organics. Is it to continue processing part at the organics processing plant or send some to another composter in the North Island? Option 3 for engagement with the community is the possibility of continuing at the current site, but with much more extensive changes than were embodied in the council resolution from last year. Dr. Pearce and his team have identified that the key issue with generating odour, which is offensive and objectionable beyond the boundary of the site on occasion, is that of outdoor storage. It's because the material is being stored outside that there is that increased risk of offensive and objectionable odour. So there are some options that the waste management team would very much like to further engage with the operator of the organics processing plant on, that could potentially lead to no or very significantly reduced outdoor storage. And those options are threefold. First one is that the operator runs a second screen. Without getting into technical detail, which is way over my head, that means that the process doesn't have a delay that requires storage outside before screening is done. A second possibility is to set some sort of ideal quantity for the amount of curbside organics that's accepted at the plant. And that ideal quantity would be worked out on the basis that it means that the plant can achieve its optimal level of maturation of the compost, which achieves a much reduced risk of odour generation, and also means that there wouldn't be any storage outside. And a third potential option for, again, significant changes at the current site is that it doesn't do the whole composting process that it does at the moment. If it was possible for the current site to do a first stage which is only involving indoor operation, and then the second stage to be managed by the council, bringing trucks to the current site, filling them up inside an enclosed building, trucking the waste, the curbside organics, to another composter somewhere else where they finish that process. It's possible that that could mean that there's no outdoor storage. So they are three potential options, but at this stage the council's experts and waste management team haven't got sufficient comfort that they can be implemented to recommend them to you. So the staff preference is that you not decide on preferring any of those now, if that was to be your preference, that you allow some more time to ensure that there is comfort that it would have the required outcome. There's been some questions about the need to get community views before making a decision today. And I'd like to briefly summarise the staff recommendation to you about the need to get those community views. First of all, simply general principles of local government requires decision making to have regard to the views of communities. Secondly, we don't know yet what mana whenua think. Engagement with them starts after the council decides to engage with the community and find out what people think. Thirdly, the operation at the current plant is part of the council's waste management system, which is identified as being a strategic asset in the council's own planning documents, and a level of service for it that this council has identified in its long-term plan is that curbside organics be processed at the organics processing plant. So doing something else is a significant change to that level of service. Fourth, costs. Fifth, because of the council's policies and strategies to do with climate resilience, waste management and emissions targets. And lastly, because it's our advice to you that this is a significant decision and it's appropriate for councils to know what their communities think before making significant decisions. So the staff recommendation on the decision-making route from here, and this also reflects the further resolutions that the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor are going to propose to you. In the immediate period in June, what's left of June and July, the waste management team and its consultants will be doing everything they can to find out whether there are any other operators or existing operators who can propose solutions to help meet the council's aims to get off the site. Secondly, further detailed investigation by the team of those possible options, including the concerns that I was expressing a moment ago over whether there can be sufficient assurance that continued operation at the current site with big changes would ensure that there's no offensive and objectionable odour. Next, exploring and reporting back to you on the use of some of the compost from the organics processing plant at the wastewater treatment plant that is accentuating and making worse the odour problems. So is there another way of dealing with that compost rather than using it at the wastewater treatment plant? Next, and this has been requested by some elected members, investigating alternative relief for households. So that might be looking at any rates implications or any other alternative relief that might be possible and reporting back to you on that. And next, and not least, preparing the consultation document. And that's a consultation document that will recognise the impact that the odour is having on the community that you heard about this morning. And after doing all that work, report back to the council. I believe you've got a council meeting on the 2nd of August, reporting back on the immediate steps that are possible. And also making a recommendation in relation to the resolution that the council made that I referred to at the start of this summary, making a recommendation to revoke the 2022 resolutions to continue at the current site. Okay, so after receiving that report on the 2nd of August, the council will be engaging in learning community and mana whenua views on the options that I've described to you. That may require, I don't think this has been resolved yet, but that may require a hearing to hear what some of the people who have expressed views think about it. And having a staff report come back to you in December. And it's in December that the council would be deciding on its preferred option for that period through to 2027, 2029. Part of the reason for that is that it's in December that the Chief Executive has directed that staff are going to report back on the long-term solution. And when you know what your decision is on the long-term solution, that will be relevant to your decision on the short-term, and by short-term I mean through to the implementation of the long-term, what the short-term solution is. If you're making a decision on your preferred option in December, that if it involves significant expense or a change to levels of service, that will still require a further decision in the long-term plan before it can be implemented. But there might be an opportunity, if this is your preference in December, to implement a partial change from February of next year. And that's because, as I said before, Cape Valley Landfill and some composters in the North Island are able to accept some of the council's curbside organics if it is your decision to use those options in the meantime. So in terms of those three options that you'll be engaging with the community on, the implementation timeframe for them, the first one, if it's composting somewhere else, as I said, possibly getting some of the waste disposed of elsewhere from February of next year. But it will take some time for any alternative composter to get their resource consents lined up. So optimistically, we're saying early 2025 might be possible for that. Obviously, I've got no idea if there are some composters out there that haven't identified themselves to us yet who might be able to do it quicker. That would hopefully become apparent within the next couple of months while the council's engaging with the community if it is possible. Option 2 would be sending, if this is the council's preferred option in December, sending it all to Cape Valley. And as I said, Cape Valley might be able to accept part of that from February of next year if it's still within its truck movement resource consent limits. There would need to be a council decision on the long-term plan in July before the council could finally confirm that decision to send it all to Cape Valley. Option 3, continued operation at the current site. If that was to be the council's preference in its decision making in December of this year. If the preference was that the operator use a second screen, that can be done fairly quickly. That would take about 5 to 6 months on their predictions. If the decision was that there be a reduced quantity processed at that site, then that will take longer to implement. It will need a long-term plan decision, and it will take longer to identify who's going to take the rest of the curbside organics. And again, if it was to be partial processing at the current site, there are resource consent issues for whoever's going to take the second stage of that composting problem, and the resource consent that they'll need after the council's identified that as an option. Just before I finish and we'll answer any questions, there was one point that was emphasised by some of the deputations this morning, quite understandably, that they want the council to make a decision today to close the plant. The reasons why the staff recommendation to you is that you can't do that today I've highlighted most of them in the summary that I've just given. The first one is because you need to make decisions in accordance with the Local Government Act, and it's our advice to you that it wouldn't be in accordance with the Local Government Act to make a decision without knowing what mana whenua and the community think. Secondly, because if you close the plant today, you need to do something with the city's curbside organics. And I've highlighted that there's no perfect solution yet for what we do with those curbside organics. There are some sites in the North Island that can take some of it at significant costs, financial and environmental. But also that Kate Valley can take some of it, a small portion of it, under its current resource consent limits. But if there was to be diversion of a portion of the waste from the organics processing plant now, that is, in short summary, it's a cost without a benefit. And the reason I say that is that the problem that's causing the offensive and objectionable odour on occasion beyond the boundary of the site is outdoor storage. And diversion of a part of the curbside organics to Kate Valley within their current limits of their resource consent isn't going to end the outdoor storage at the site. So the problem won't go away. Thank you.
All done?
All done.
Right. Thank you. I want to thank staff very much for that and all the work that's been going on in here, out there, and for months. Okay. Now, I'm going to move the Mayor's recommendation, which incorporates the staff's recommendation with some amendments. Pauline is happy to second this. The key points are, as Brent has said, Rec 1 sets out our previous resolution and notes the smell has still continued. Number 2, confirms our preference to stop composting on site, but notes we will decide once the engagement is complete, consultation. 3, sets out the options for the interim solution between now and the new facility opening, including current changes to current operation, sending to other composters, sending to landfill. Number 4, confirms that we will decide when the interim option, confirms that we will decide on when the interim option we can do as soon as practical once the engagement is done. Number 5, asks for a staff report on revoking the previous resolution, immediate things we can do to change, including stopping compost going around the wastewater treatment ponds, which is certainly not helping, anything that can be done to change immediately on site the stop of the smell, and options, the one I like, the options to provide any relief to households that are affected. I know that Yanni has some amendments, which Pauline and I are happy to have put into our resolution or our amendment. But Yanni, would you just like to talk on these, your amendments, please?
Yeah, I thought you were just going to add them to the main one, and then we were just going to debate together. So
6 and 7.
Oh, I mean, I'm happy to introduce it, but effectively what it does is it reinforces the stories and the deputations and the community views that we've heard repeatedly over the 14 years to be incorporated into any consultation and engagement that we do, so that at the very forefront of this discussion is the impact on the local people in regards to the well-being of their community. So I hope people will support these, but I think in light of what we've heard, not just today, but as you've heard, repeated deputations to council around the significance of this issue impacting on people's well-being and health, that it's important that we make sure that it's very, very clear that we acknowledge that and that we actually make sure that in the engagement, those views are put to the fore.
Thank you, Yanni. They've got amendments. Pauline, first question. You don't have a question there.
Addressed what was my question?
Yes, about being able to shut it immediately. Yeah. Righto. Then we had Kelly and then Aaron.
Yeah, no, that was my question too. Why couldn't we shut it immediately? And that's been made clear brilliantly by Brent. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, I've got 5 really important questions, if I may, and I'll start the first one with why do we have, and if the answers could be kind of short, just because obviously there's a long version as well that probably takes a university degree to get, but why do we have an RMA and why do we have consents? That's my first question. I mean, I grew up in Bromley, so I need really simple answers.
Why do we have an RMA? To manage the sustainable management of natural and physical resources in a way that meets the social and environmental and economic well-beings and cultural well-beings of the community.
Brilliant. And I thought that would be your answer. So a consent's there to protect the environment and the people around it, essentially.
A consent is there to authorise activity to happen within limits that achieve the objective of the RMA.
Okay, cool, thank you. Then what happens, and Christchurch is used to disasters, what happens in a disaster, like if that plant burnt down tonight, was hit by a tsunami tomorrow, was dropped by an earthquake next week, what happens to that organics plant?
Well, using the example of the Christchurch earthquakes, central government makes new law to manage environmental outcomes during that period.
Right, okay. So then my next one is the Cape Valley. Is the Cape Valley issue a capacity issue or purely a consent issue?
Consent.
So it's the consent. So what happens if the Cape Valley consent is breached for truck movements? Because the people of Bromley would ask, why is it okay to breach the odour in Bromley under a consent when you can't breach the truck movements at Cape Valley? Is the answer I'm looking for to that.
That is the answer you're looking for?
No, to that question.
Can you ask the question again, please?
The people of Bromley would like to know, why can we not breach truck movement consents at Cape Valley, but we can breach the air-conditioned consents that them and their children have to breathe in Bromley?
Because this council doesn't hold any consents for Cape Valley. The consents are held by the operator of Cape Valley, and those consents are issued by the Hiranui District Council. So in order to dispose of curbside organics at Cape Valley, the current operator needs to decide whether they want to breach their resource consent or whether they would prefer to act lawfully.
Right. Okay. That is a good answer, because it's good to know who's in charge of what. And what about, don't we have an obligation under health and safety to protect the people in our neighbourhood? Like if we're doing an activity which puts them at mental and physical harm to their health, where is our obligation, and how can we continue to do that if we know that we are doing that?
It's precisely because of this council's concerns with that this council has decided to relocate to another site. And it's also precisely because of those concerns that this council asked staff to provide this report to you on ways to relocate sooner.
Right, but normally the way health and safety legislation is used is that once you identify a risk, you deal with it immediately, like building site, find a smidgen of asbestos, close it down until it's removed, and removed by professionals. But in this case, and I know it's not asbestos, but in this case, why do we not stop the activity when we know we are breaching?
Well, we are breaching obligations under the Resource Management Act. I've seen no investigation of whether the council is breaching any health and safety obligations. So if you want advice from staff on that, I suggest you ask for it and staff can report back to you on it.
So then finally, given that we've been told of these claims for years now, have we looked into that, and if not, why not?
My expectation is that the council has, but I can answer that at our next report or
that
next
would be
briefing.
good, and if we could make that public, would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Good answers. Mark?
Well, my questioning was really well handled by Aaron, and really I'd just like to confirm there is no physical way we can close that plant tomorrow?
Correct.
Okay. We heard in the deputations of a gentleman that was offering a solution. Why have we not managed to engage with them prior to him coming to talk to us today?
That will take a little bit more work to find out what he has been saying to the council and when he has. I don't know whether you've got to the bottom of that, Mary.
I had a quick conversation with the gentleman. He had engaged with us over WTP and had met with the officer in charge about that, and subsequently he has sent in Logoima requests to the Logoima team and has got the information back. We have now got his contact detail. Megan got that for us, and we will be engaging with him. But he had not engaged, to our knowledge, about this, and to his advice before now.
Right. Mark, you're done?
And I've got sort of one last thing, because I did notice in the report there was a mention of Pound Road as one of the possible alternate sites.
That's got nothing to do with what we're doing.
Well, I need to ask on behalf of my community to make sure that we've got no risk out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the alternative solutions to take some of the compost is a local composter, commercial composter from Canterbury, expanding their operation and opening a new site. At this stage, Pound Road is an indicative location. Nothing yet has been confirmed and no ground has been broken. So it's just an indication for our planning purposes at this stage.
Because I would hate us to move this to a site that will affect any other residents anywhere.
Yes, and we have taken that into consideration with all the options we've looked at.
Thank you listen, look at that. It's no more questions. So we'll go into debate. Oh, yeah.
Good try. I just wondered, in terms of our assessment of the policies, we seem to be quite silent on our strengthening communities strategy and also our resilient greater Christchurch strategy. And in both of those strategies is reference to people's wellbeing. So again, like just to pick up on, you've kind of listed the reasons why in terms of things like the waste minimisation strategy, climate change strategy, but you haven't really talked much about the other policies that look after people's wellbeing at a local level. Are we able to do that for the consultation so that it's really clear that there's other policies and strategies that we have as a council that support the call that the community is making around how they're impacted?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We'll do that.
Yeah, I think it could have been a faux pas on our behalf, but we didn't necessarily look at these other policies to be included in this particular report because that's where these reports originated from, was addressing the wellbeing concerns. So for anything further, that those policies will be included.
I guess the question comes down to, and it's a bit like some of the questions that Councillor Kieran has raised, is how is it that we have a risk of breaching some policies but not others with the decisions that we make to address the issue for the community?
Yeah, so the policies that you're talking about will be referred to, I'm sure, in the engagement document that will be coming back to you.
Right.
So have a close look at the draft of that when it comes back.
Okay. Is there? Do you have a sense of, over the history of the plant, the number of complaints that we've received and the number of non-compliances in total?
I haven't got any numbers.
We can't give them to you today, but we do keep a record of them. Majority of the complaints that come through go through ECAN, and we get a monthly summary of the concerns that have been lodged to ECAN for the past month. We collate those, so we can get those to you if you wish.
Okay.
Because I guess
I'd like to get into debate if I can, but carry on.
Okay.
I only got
so I think, again, just in terms of the information that when it goes out, if there could be some context to the number of times that people have had to complain, and I know ECAN records incidences rather than complaints, but actually showing the scale of the issue over the 14 years, I think is really important when people go to make submissions. So is there a way that we can highlight the number of complaints that have been received, again, in that consultation, if that's what we decide to do?
We're not the part of the council who draft the engagement document, but we'll pass this message on to them and they'll have a draft coming back to you for your approval.
Just two other questions. One is, in terms of the abatement notice, where are we at with ECAN? Because my understanding is, obviously, we had an adaptive management plan that failed. ECAN served us a notice.
Yeah, we're addressing all that, and we're looking to go forward. What's happened in the past is bad, but we want to
but looking forward, my understanding from the liaison group meeting that we had, which is publicly minuted, that ECAN have said they will do an independent review of the consent around the plant being able to operate and being non-compliant, and also the conditions. So have we had any communication from ECAN around that review and a likely time frame for it?
I don't know about a time frame for it. I understand that the review is underway.
Okay, all good. So we've finished with questions. Now we're into debate. Woo-hoo. Who would like to go first? Mark, Mark.
Thank you. I'd like to personally apologise to the residents of Bromley and the east of Christchurch. I've heard your pleas this morning and wholeheartedly empathise with the horrific situation you find yourselves in. To be forced to tolerate this problem as long as you have is simply not acceptable. I'm extremely frustrated that we are even here having to deal with this again today. Sadly, I feel the previous council failed in their obligations to act as they should have closed the OPP last year. We have known about these problems with odour ruining the lives of the neighbours in the Bromley and East Christchurch area for far too long. Whilst I understand that we as a council must follow through the processes involved in resolving this, and it's good to see that we will be after today, hopefully, my strong preference would be to close this OPP immediately and do the right thing by the residents who have suffered for far too long. I wish there was a way we could be seen to be a big and bold council and close this as of now. I would urge us as a council to do all that we can, knock on every door we need to, in order to get this OPP closed as soon as physically possible, and a replacement option in place to meet our obligations to handle this green and food waste as soon as possible. If that means we need to work with government and any other agencies or persons or parties to get this done, we simply must. The limitations we bind ourselves up with in this country through red tape really need to be overcome, and we need to find ways to get the right things done rather than simply settling for the excuses we can't. We need to get back to the can-do attitude that Canterbury has been famous for over history. As we heard the deputation today, enough indeed is enough, and this has to stop, if not immediately, then absolutely as soon as humanly possible. It is time for us as a council to be the good neighbour and do the right thing by our communities.
Thank you. Pauline.
Thank you, and I concur with Councillor Peters' comments, particularly as soon as possible, and I think that has to be the mantra for today. And I do hope that the residents can take some hope out of these resolutions today. That has been a huge amount of work arriving to these, and we've had, I don't know how many iterations of them actually, but I feel that we've got into a pretty good place. And particularly I have to refer to number 5, where we are seeking a report, and we have to have a report to make a decision to revoke the decision in the Finance and Performance Committee meeting, which for me was actually a perverse outcome. We were actually agreeing to allow staff to pursue further improvements, and as a consequence of that, the plant had to remain open, rather than actually consciously saying we want to keep it open. We've never wanted to keep it open. We've been aware of this for a long, long time, but it's been one of the most challenging problems that I've faced. I too am sorry that all the various changes and improvements have not solved the objectionable odour problem. And I also am sorry that we can't close it today, and we've heard the reasons for that. But I assure the community of affected residents that this council is committed to solving this as soon as possible, ASAP, and that we've noted here that we prefer to end the activity at the site. I'm also sorry that the wheels turn slowly at local government because we're bound by strict processes, including consulting the whole city. However, we are, and I am, promising to get these changes through as soon as possible and the activity to close as soon as possible. Look, I also want to thank staff for the incredible amount of work bringing all those options through, the long list right down to the short list, all that will help to reduce the odour in the short term and the long term. But the reason we can't close it now too, we know that we need to find somewhere to take it. And it's a real challenge, but again, we will commit to doing that as soon as possible. And in the meantime, we'll be working hard to actually find ways to reduce the volume going there. I think that's the key. And staff will work with the operator on optimal operation. We'll continue to do that, in my view, without investing any more money in it. I repeat, though, that this council is committed to ending this activity in Bromley and to finding relief for the residents who've made it clear to us that they are suffering, and we will do this as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, it may seem very simple to a lot of us what to do here, but in fact, I think the whole council has come to realise over the last few months just how complex this issue is. On one level, we want to respond with our hearts, and we want to fix the problem for the people who have come out and so articulately explained what they've been through in their lives. But we have to respond with our heads, and I think we've tried to do that. I really want to commend staff on the excellent work that they've done in answering all our questions and giving us so many different options to look at. But at the end of the day, we really need to do the right thing for the people and to close this as soon as possible. I'm proud to be part of this council, which is actually going to address this issue and finish it off. Which has been festering in our city for so long. So, yeah.
Thank you. So it's for me to say to Aaron, have debate?
Yeah, I'm not sure where to start here, but I might start with the Mark Peters question about is it coming to Hornby, because we don't want it there. The not in my backyard principle probably applies to most councillors here, except for this one, because I have the biggest backyard that's flat. Tyrone has the biggest backyard, but it's not flat. There's hundreds of acres in Harewood of unproductive, mostly unused land, and a lot of it owned by ECAN and others. There are many alternatives to do this. A temporary composting plant that's not within cooey of anyone would not be that hard to do. This is a can't-do council sometimes, and Christchurch once was famous for being a can-do city. Looking post-rebuild, we are a bit of a can't-do city. The amount of time it's taken for us to solve problems and get things going sometimes is appalling. So I will, in this case, stand up for the people of Bromley. I will say we should be shutting this today. Christchurch, as a city, has been shitting in Bromley's backyard, literally, since before I was born. The sewer farm's there, the composting plant's there. They put up with the smell. The smell's unacceptable. It's a smell I know well because I have two businesses in the area and I stop often at the Celtic station on Dyers Road, and you can smell it most days, and the smell is untenable. I ask all of you if you would go and live next to that plant with your children, because I look you all in the eye and I guarantee the answer is no. I dare one of you to put your hand up now and say you'll live next to it, because I'll tell you what, I'll pay your first month's rent. We'll rent you a place. And you go there with your kids and you do it. These people come in here and they shed tears to this council, and we say it can't be done because of the Resource Management Act that we are happy to breach most days. Yes, we get the reported breaches, but there are breaches beyond that most days. Do not do this to these people. Find a solution. And God help this country if we ever go to war, because I think we'll just sit back and take it.
Right.
Be a load of rubbish if you want, but it is what we dump in their backyard. A load of rubbish every day.
Okay, so, yeah, Yanni, debate.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's a shame as a council we no longer stand up when we debate, but I think there's times when it is actually important to stand up, and today is one of those. I just want to start, at the start of our council meeting, we acknowledge the importance of volunteers. I want to acknowledge every single person in this community who has volunteered, given up countless hours of their time over a decade of coming to council, raising concerns to the elected members, to council staff, and to liaise with other people in the community to stand up for their well-being. The reality is that this decision to put the organics plant here in 2007 was the wrong one. I was on the council at the time that we made that vote, and I abstained because I was concerned about the lack of information in the report to give us a good option. We had two choices back then that were delegated to staff. One was to put it where it is today, and the other was to put it in a forest away from residential. And I have no understanding of why the tender and the evaluation came back to put it where it was, which is in the wrong location, on the coast with a prevailing wind that makes the residential area suffer. This was in 2007. We have repeatedly had votes around this table to do the right thing by the community, and last year we had a vote to close it immediately that was lost, and now we're back here a year later with the same issues. The point that my council colleague makes is absolutely right. For every time that there's a notice of non-compliance or ECAN go and investigate, there are literally thousands of complaints that have been made and thousands of incidents that have occurred in this community that have never been reported, never been acted on, and never been faced the consequence of a breach of a consent. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen, it does. And now the evidence is overwhelming. Even our own Oda scouts have highlighted to us that there are many times where this is offensive and objectionable beyond the boundary in breach of its consent. So I welcome the information that we're getting today, but the time has come to take action. And I acknowledge the resolutions that we've got in front of us are a lot better than the ones that I think we had at the start of the day, which the resolutions here give us a time frame to get things back to the 2nd of August meeting where we can make some decisions, which I think we absolutely need to make. I just want to conclude with saying that this is not just a Bromley issue. This impacts on people in Bromley, but it also impacts on people in many other parts of our city. It impacts on people in Woolston, it impacts on people in Linwood, it impacts on people in Phillipstown, it impacts on people in Aranui, it impacts on people in South New Brighton. There'll be other communities that are also impacted by it. This council needs to start to address the environmental inequity that exists in the east of this city. For far too long it has gone on, and we have allowed it to happen rather than address it. Today we start to address it, and I support the resolutions that are put up.
Sam.
Oh yeah, look, just very briefly, I just wanted to, again, obviously acknowledge the significant impact this has on a local community, but I think, this has been a really highly emotive issue, but actually wanted to call out the fact that we have a way forward, and I think that's really important when there is a community suffering, that at the same time we can acknowledge that as a council, and I know through the leadership of Phil and Pauline, how committed they are to resolving this issue. I'm just really pleased that we've got to a point today where we can work as a united council to move this forward. We will get to the end of the year, in my view, and have an outcome that works for everybody. I think the challenges that have been presented as we've gone through the questions and even the debate, Mark mentioned the fact that they don't want it on Pound Road. That quantifies the significant challenges we have with this. So we have to do it once and we have to do it right. So I guess as much as, again, expressing frustration, I think we should also reflect on the fact we have a way forward. We will consult the community and make a decision that works for everybody. But again, acknowledging and reassuring the people of Bromley and again the wider community, having known how many hours both the Mayor and Deputy Mayor have spent on this issue and continue to, this won't go away without a resolution. So I think we're as close as we've ever been to getting to a point where there is a long-term solution that our council can be proud of. And so we shouldn't lose sight of that today, that we are doing the right thing by the community, getting a decent outcome, and doing it in a way that can't slow down this process and for the years to come. Because that's the stark reality. If we reacted or overreacted today, we would be in a position where we are inflicting more harm and more suffering onto that community. So I just want to acknowledge my colleagues for taking a considered and sensible approach to this, and again reassuring the community that the Mayor and Deputy Mayor are working and certainly questioning the staff daily on this to get to a point that we will be proud of as a city.
Thank you. Andre.
Thank you very much. For a number of years I worked in an office which was 3 kilometres away from this plant, and often the smell was so bad just to walk outside from 3 kilometres away. I can barely understand what it's like to live just several hundred metres. I honestly can barely begin to understand. I can't understand how residents were gaslit for so many years to tell them the stink wasn't coming from there. Everyone's green bin at home stinks, so it's not rocket science to figure out that a city's worth of green bins will also stink. One of the big considerations we have going forward and what we do is the environmental impacts. we've been destroying an environment for 14 years in Bromley. The environment is, as the definition is, the surroundings or conditions in which a person, animal, or plant lives or operates. But that environmental consideration doesn't seem to be in consideration for many years. Seems like now it is. So when we look at environmental considerations, that has to be one of them. We are actively destroying an environment where people live in right now. So I support getting it gone as soon as we can.
Thank you. So no more debate. I will wrap it up. Right. I do not support keeping the OPP open 1 second longer than is necessary. We are, however, in strife. All the work we've done over the last few years has not worked as well, or at all, in some people's minds, as we thought. This resolution is the first step in giving us permission to reduce the volume by taking it to other places. It also sets the ball in motion to stop compost being spread at the wastewater treatment plant, which is certainly not helping the situation. Because the OPP does all of the city's green bin waste, we have to consult. The Deputy Mayor and I have worked hard to get this consultation underway as soon as possible. Once the consultation is done, we will be able to instantly do one of the three things. Continue it, which won't go down at all, or take some or all to other composters, or take some of all to landfill. There's a couple of other things I wanted to say. One of the other things is that we need to use that 18,000 tonne that Cape Valley has got up its sleeve as fast as we can, because there's a gap there and we can use it. They haven't got the consents to take it all, but I feel that if we put less into the OPP as soon as we can, it'll take the pressure off an overworked machine. So it's all got to help. We put less in, it's got to help the situation. I don't really want to see council spend another cent down at Bromley at the OPP, because it's just throwing good money after bad. Instead of spending it down there, I'd rather spend it on dump fees taking it away. I did go down and see, Vicky Walker has been in touch with me off and on for a number of years, and I went down and saw it. She rang up and she said, "Oh, it smells." So I shot down there and she said, "You just missed it. The wind's changed." Now, it can change like that. I've talked to the others. It can be bad there. She said, "We had the wastewater treatment plant this morning, but then we had the OPP, and right now we've got nothing. But if you come back in an hour, it could well all be back." So these, and occasionally some of us may drive down there one day, wind our window down and say, "Oh, it doesn't smell. What are these people prattling on about?" And it is bad. Okay, we've heard today it is bad. So what have we got? So in my view, the other thing that they've had to put up with is sadly the fire from the wastewater treatment plant. But that's working through. We're working on our insurance for that, and that will pop out. I think by the end of the year we'll know what's happening there with a bit of luck. In my view, as Councillor Peters said, this is definitely a case of enough is definitely enough in this case. But we are moving forward, and we are going to get this sorted. Thank you very much. And with that, I will put this motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? You want that recorded, Aaron? Yep, thank you. And Mark, Aaron and Mark recorded now. Who abstained? Okay, so we've been there. I say that is carried. Thank you very much for all your attendance. Thank you. Right, so we will move on to item 6. Are they there? Okay, item 6. Kota Kaikino Stormwater Management Plan. Paul, good to see you again, bud.
Do you want us to take a minute to let people...
Yep.
Do you want us to take a few minutes to let people out, or you just want to keep going?
Okay, well, just wait a few moments. More. I'll do it. Have item 6. Far away, Paul. Thank you, guys.
Kia ora. We're pleased to bring to you today the Otakaikino Stormwater Management Plan. As you would have gleaned from the briefing that was held a few days ago or a week ago, the Otakaikino Stormwater Management Plan is one of 7 stormwater management plans which are in the process of being developed or have been developed, and they form an integral part of our meeting our obligations as council under the comprehensive stormwater discharge consent, which was granted in 2019. So I'll introduce Paul Dixon, who you're familiar with, who has held the pen on the SMPs delivered to date, and including this one. And I'll hand over to him to run through the content more fully, and we can then answer any questions. Just to put a bit more context around the SMPs generally, as I say, they're an integral part of our consent. They existed, in fact, though, prior to that, and were a foundation document really for managing stormwater through the city from, I guess, about 10 years ago or more, Paul. And they were quite a forward-looking and, in some ways, quite a ahead of their time type document. They address both stormwater quality and quantity, and in the quantity aspect we include flooding, and the quality aspect relates to discharges into our waterways. It's important to note that these the scope of SMPs as it's currently defined under the consent is very specific. It relates to elements that we as council must deliver on within an SMP. And it's important to note also that in terms of managing both the quality and quantity aspects of stormwater and flood management, they don't cover all the aspects that we as a city need to address. They, as the name suggests, of the context they sit within the comprehensive stormwater network discharge consent, the scope, if you like, of the SMP doesn't cover off aspects relating to stormwater quality and quantity that relate, for instance, to the waterways themselves and their interactions with the environment. So on that note, I'll hand over to Paul to go through some of the aspects of this particular SMP.
Thank you, Kevin. By December 2024, the Council will have delivered 7 stormwater management plans to Environment Canterbury. The Otakaikino Stormwater Management Plan is number 4. In brief, the purpose of stormwater management plans is to set the Council on a trajectory of improving the quality of its stormwater discharges towards targets that are in the Canterbury Land and Water Regional Plan. There's no endpoint date for those targets to be reached, and I think it's understood that that date might be quite a long time away. However, Environment Canterbury and Tangata Whenua are, let's say, reasonably satisfied with to see progress, and this stormwater management plan demonstrates progress. I'm mindful that you've received a briefing a week ago. I'm going to be fairly brief. And what I'll do is I'll just look at what this plan is doing in the Otakaikino catchment and why. The Otakaikino catchment is up there, a bunch of colours showing that the catchment is mostly rural, the green colour, and that there's a brown blob towards the south, which is the airport. There's a purple blob above the airport, which is quarry zone. And there's a fringe on the right-hand side of urban development, most of which is future urban development. And I think it's obvious that if the city is to set itself on a trajectory of improvement for stormwater, the first thing it must do is deal with the effects of new development, and that's what this plan will do. The lilac-y colour is mostly future industrial, and the buffy colour is mostly future residential. And I seem to have lost something here. Oh yes, okay. What the plan is going to do is it's going to treat all of the present and future urbanised area of the catchment. It's going to, which is unusual. We haven't been able to achieve that in any other catchment so far. It's possible in this catchment because the urban area is fairly small. Also because there's space for building treatment basins, and the light green blobs represent the treatment basins that will be built in the Otakaikino catchment. The blue blobs, the sort of mid-blue blobs, are existing basins. The result that our contaminant modelling says we will achieve, sorry, you'll have heard this in my last presentation, but I think it's useful to recap. Once there has been full catchment development, which is what we're looking towards, and all the facilities have been built, there'll be a very significant reduction in total suspended solids or sediment. I think the reduction is about 80%. We will hold a line on copper, so there'll be more roads, more vehicles, but we'll be treating copper, so there won't be any increase. Unfortunately, the technology we can employ will, let's see, zinc is predicted to increase by 4.5 times, and the treatment we can do will bring it down to an increase of, an increase of 100% on what's there at the moment. So it's not the outcome we would have hoped to achieve, but it's still a pretty good result. Environment Canterbury will be looking at that, and I guess we'll get their feedback. So that was all I was proposing to say. I'm happy to answer questions from councillors.
Right, so we've got Tyler had his hand up first, and then Mark, and then Kelly.
Kia ora. You were saying that Ecan and Co were mostly happy. Did they have reservations that didn't go far enough, or?
Could you give me a little more context around what?
Previously, you said they were mostly happy with the management plan. Is there other things that they wanted that were maybe not attainable?
If I seem to have said something I didn't intend to say.
Gotcha.
What I am indicating is, I think I expect them to be happy with the SMP, but they may come back to us and say, couldn't you do better on zinc?
I see.
And we'll have to have a conversation about that.
Okay. No, that's really my only question. Thanks.
Thank you. So I've got, at the moment, I've got Aaron who is happy to move it and Sam who is happy to second it. Got it? Okay. Next question is Mark. Yeah, I'm not putting it, just don't panic.
It's okay. Just making sure you haven't forgotten me.
Yeah, I haven't forgotten you.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on the Christchurch Airport deputation that we had earlier.
Yes.
And ensure that this is all in hand, and as these stormwater basins are developed, that you'll be working completely with them to make sure that there's no bird strike risk because of what we're doing?
Well, I'm grateful that the CIAL representatives gave us a tick for consultation. We did work pretty hard with them and incorporated everything they asked within the plan. I think it's fair to say that every wet basin that is built has some effect on bird strike risk, and we're in a position where we have to build basins. We don't have a choice about that, and we also have to do it in a way that minimises increased bird strike risk. And the provisions we've put in the plan are ought to do that.
I might just add too, in regard to the airport submission generally, that in the formation of and the development of the comprehensive consent, the airport company made submissions to that, and they were duly heard at hearing by the commissioners, and their decision was reflected in the conditions of the consent, both in terms of what we need to do generally within the consent, but also specifically regarding stormwater management plans. We need to consult with them around the management of bird strike risk within 3 kilometres of the airport. So, and that's what we do as part of our SMPs. Yep.
Good, thank you. Pauline.
Thank you. Just about going to sleep. Zinc.
Steady.
Zinc, is that mainly from roofing? Yeah, but mainly.
In citywide, it is, because citywide there tend to be quite a lot of bare steel roofs or bare metal roofs in industrial areas and old metal galvanised roofs in old residential areas. In the Otakakina catchment, where most roofs will be new, most roofs will be colour steel and they'll be clean.
Yep.
So the majority of zinc is going to come from roads, from vehicles
tyres.
on roads.
And so in what way can we do more? ECAN wants us to do more to reduce the amount of zinc?
Well,
It's the same as
a
copper, isn't it?
possibility that you could consider, although it's, well, one could treat all the stormwater coming off busy roads, and there's a cost implication, of course. So it's an option.
Right.
And sorry, just to add to that, there are technological advances happening in the bulk treatment, if you like, of stormwater, and there is one particular technology that we're looking at the moment that, in some circumstances, may be applicable to treatment either in addition to or instead of the conventional sort of basin arrangement.
Yep.
And that would have likely improved outcomes. Is that correct, Paul?
I actually thank you, Kevin, for reminding me. Yes, so in practical terms, what Kevin's referring to is there's a technology called floating wetlands, where you've got a wetland, which we will have, we're building them, and you introduce a floating platform with plants in it whose roots will uptake, say, metals. So we will, I think it's fairly likely we'll trial that.
As long as they don't attract birds.
Less so, I think.
I found it quite concerning that you said that the mitigation of the ponds will actually reduce the effect of the development to only twice that of our current baseline, rather than 4 times if it wasn't there. I mean, that's still very high, isn't it? Does that mean that we actually need to put in more basins, or how could we get that number down?
Well, as Kevin was just describing, we have, I guess our first protocol there would be to look at add-ons to existing basins and wetlands, such as the floating wetland I just spoke about.
Okay, but then I suppose it has budgetary implications. Another question I have is in your 4.2 and 4.3. So, plan option A is the aspirational stormwater quality, but plan B is the compliance and the capital work that's already in the LTP. But also it says that plan B does not preclude additional council funding to achieve enhanced levels of stormwater treatment. So my question to you is, would you be seeking additional funding in the LTP to improve the water quality here?
Yes, we will be, and that's really linked into a bit of a crossover between the two aspects that you've just mentioned, the more aspirational,
Yeah.
which I prefer to sort of term as more forward-looking. The comprehensive consent requires us, besides doing, if you like, the infrastructural nuts and bolts type things such as building basins or other treatment facilities, according to a schedule which was agreed at the time of the consent decision, we also, within the consent, are obligated to improve both the water quality, stormwater quality and quantity management over time. And, you know, we're at the point now where we need to give serious consideration to measures which will achieve that. With having had the consent in operation for 4 years, we can track where we've got to with some of our facilities that we've put in place over that time and predict where we need to get to make that improvement. And that will be reflected in the LTP.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yanni, please.
Just wanted to check if we've had position statement from MKT.
I don't believe we have. It's quite a long process. It involves the draft statement getting developed by MKT and then sent to the Runanga for ratification, and I don't think it's come back from the Runanga yet.
So is there any reason why we're having to approve this today ahead of getting that position statement?
There is, because our consent condition says we have to deliver this SMP to Environment Canterbury on the 30th of June 2023.
Right. And if we went back to Environment Canterbury, we've obviously had a bit of a discussion about consenting non-compliances earlier, but if we said we're waiting to get the view from MKT, is that something that you think they would show us some leniency on? Because it would be pretty fundamental, wouldn't it?
I can answer that, Councillor. We had a recent consent condition that we had to complete by the 30th of June, and we went to ECAN and said, hey, we've got most of it here, but there's just a couple of bits, and they said, no, it's non-compliant. So there wasn't any movement on that particular one.
Right.
So while we do work closely with ECAN on a lot of things, when it becomes a regulatory matter like that, it's less flexibility.
I guess that, I'd hope that ECAN, and from all accounts, that they would appreciate the impact of mana whenua as being quite significant and probably valuable to us actually getting ahead of making a decision.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor. But we talk to them all the time about that type of thing. But in this situation, when we're given a date to comply with, we need to do that.
So,
Councillor, our conditions don't require us to include a position statement from mana whenua. We're doing it. We're doing it because we think it's the right thing to do. But we can deliver. The intention is to deliver the position statement later than the delivery date, and Environment Canterbury's okay about that.
So what happens if the position statement conflicts with something that we've agreed? Like, what if it wants option A instead of option B?
The position statement isn't that sort of document. What the Runanga has, they've decided they will not comment specifically on the SMP. The reason for giving a position statement is that they say, this is our position, and you have a choice of coming towards us and meeting our position or doing something else. That way they preserve a distance between what the council is choosing to do and what is their, let's say, Mahanui iwi management plan. So it's, in my view, it's quite a sensible position for the Runanga to take, and it also allows us to deliver on time.
Sorry, I guess maybe I'll just be really clear. Like if mana whenua come back to us and say, we want you to do this, after we've approved it, what opportunity do we have to revise it or to respond to the concerns that they've raised? Now, there's other councillors who meet with mana whenua on a more regular basis, but I guess that the key was just to try and understand if there is a kind of tension there, is there a mechanism that we can resolve it after we've submitted it to ECAN?
The position statement is such that it reflects mana whenua views about the environment, and their view is always that they would like the council to do more. There's always more to be done, but they also understand that there's only so much the council can do. They're not going to come back to us and say they want us to do more. It's implicit in the relationship.
Thank you, Paul. That's a great answer.
Sorry, just the only other question is I was quite interested in the quite detailed submission around Woolston, and I know you've
Yeah. This is sticks.
No, the submission has actually given a whole bunch of photos and lots of detail around the concern around the stormwater impact on intensification. So, yeah, I guess you're talking in there about some sort of modelling, and I was just kind of trying to understand. I thought we were doing a citywide flood model. I don't quite know where that's got to, but I see in here that the one in Heathcote's due for completion August 2023. In terms of addressing the concerns that submitter has raised, do we have adequate resources looking at the impacts of that?
This is the Otakaikino Stormwater Management Plan.
We did get a submission on, but this was a submission.
There's a submission, quite a detailed one.
July.
Well, you can get back to Yanni on that, I'm sure.
Sorry, I'd like...
Rather than drop you in it.
I sort of lost a few voices there. Dawn, what was your comment?
You can get back to Yanni on that answer if you like, because it's fairly detailed by the sound of it.
Yeah, I think I can give a sort of a general answer that hydraulic modelling in the stormwater flood management space is it's a cornerstone of the work we do. Planning wise, delivery wise, forms a foundation of what you see depicted here, and we do need to accelerate that program, and again that will be reflected in the LTP submissions that we make.
Thank you very much. Right, the last question is mine, please. Okay. Where the orange stuff is going to be houses one day. Is that so? You're building the green ones like 1109 and 1108, similar to what you did out in Sparks Road with Eastman Reserve and Sutherland's Basin. You're preparing these for when there is going to be houses where the pink bit is.
Yes.
So they, in theory, out at Horswell, all of those new sections are paying a little percentage towards the building of that through their DCs. Is that? I'm just trying to let everyone out there know.
In the case of the two numbers you mentioned, I believe they're being built by the developer at the developer's own cost.
Okay, so they're little or no cost to us.
Yes.
Okay. How will they go being able to build them? Because I know we're in strife with ECAN getting ponds built. Have you got any quick, wise answers to that? With consents on water take and stuff, or are we
the same challenges apply?
Yeah.
To those particular facilities, and certainly in my view heightens the importance of resolving that issue. Developers will be focused on doing what they need to do in the shortest time practicable, and so they may well address the challenges that are presented through the ECAN interpretation by changing their designs, but that will increase cost, which will then pass on to the customers.
Because I'm hearing that it may be next year before we get an answer out of ECAN, which is not a good look for us, for our stormwater ponds that we've got in train, and developers who are jumping up and down wanting to do things. Because in your I know this is a stormwater management plan that's going out or getting presented. When do you think the digger is going to act? The developer wants to start digging the hole, roughly. Those two ponds.
Those specific ones.
If you can't answer,
it doesn't matter. No, talk to me later. No, that's fine. Yeah, so anyway, that's very good. I'm going to put this motion. All those in favour, and there's no debate. All those against. Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done. You did a lot of work to this, so it's good. And it has to be done, so it's good. Thank you. Okay, number 7. The review of the cruising and prohibited times on road bylaw and proposed consultation on replacement bylaw. That's a big mouthful. Did I say here happy to move from someone? Right, Tyler's happy to move and Mark's happy to second, and you want to take it as read and you got a question? Okay.
I've had, since the briefing we had yesterday and today, there's some interest in adding other roads. So is there a method for doing that? Or if people were to bring up roads during the consultation period, and then how would they be dealt with?
I think if roads were raised during the consultation period, we would take those on board and investigate them fully, and then have to consult specifically on those proposals to add or alter roads. We couldn't just add them through the consultation process because we wouldn't have given other people a chance to comment on those roads.
So would that process be the same? Like, would that consultation process follow on close to it, or would it be in a further few years? Like, what would be the length of time?
It would depend on the issues, I guess. So the bylaw works as a mechanism which enables roads to be added or removed by resolution with a consultation process, and then there's a policy that sets out what we'd consider and analyse and look at, including talking to the police and examining the whole situation, and then making recommendations to the community board about whether to proceed with consultation, and then the recommendation would come to council to ultimately add roads after that. So it would just depend on the issues raised and whether we wanted to take that further, taking the assessment criteria and the policy into consideration.
It would also depend on the scale of the road that's being proposed to change. So if it was a say a minor industrial cul-de-sac off an additional road that's already covered or proposed, I think that would be far easier to include, rather than say a road which has citywide interest or serves another function, or one that's been previously reviewed, for instance, as well.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Aaron?
So just on the Blake's Road section, Redcliffe to Belfast Road, so we've still got issues there with antisocial behaviour from time to time. Doesn't that prohibited times on roads, that exempts the residents that live there or their visitors? So then if we weren't to remove that, then doesn't that leave the police with the tool that if half a dozen clowns have turned up and thinking of doing burnouts, the cops turn up and go, why are you here? And they go, oh, we live here, and they show us prove it, and they don't, they go, please leave. Doesn't it give them that tool?
It does, but we don't tend to use it on an area where we expect a lot of legitimate use at night. So we're proposing to remove it from that area because of that subdivision that's been put in, where there will be a lot of residents that can only access the subdivision from that road. So we tend to put it on roads that are very quiet at night and aren't otherwise used a lot. Yep. Because we don't want most people using it to be in the exemption category, because it applies to all vehicles using the road, or all light vehicles using the road, not just to people up to no good. So we're careful about how we use that regulatory power on roads, and we're removing just that section with the residential development. That the other section is remaining.
Well, yeah, the problem here, the residential only goes halfway down that section, and then the other half is actually quite a good lap for doing burnouts around the block.
The other half is still covered.
Well, this is Redcliffe to Belfast Road.
Removing part of it.
You're removing part of it.
Yeah.
Removing section of Blake's Road from Belfast Road to Redcliffe Road. That sounds like the whole section, but is it not?
It's the we currently regulate the whole road. We're removing the bit that gives access to the residential area.
So half of the area from Belfast to Redcliffe.
I don't know the roads in detail.
There'll be, yeah, there's an
proposal.
industrial zone delineation line, which you probably know quite well.
It is the residential one that's the change is a direct result of the
houses going.
Yeah.
But the residents are still saying they've got problems.
Then they need to let the police know so that they can deal with it at the time.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
So, but just to be clear, because in the wording here it says from Blake's to Belfast, I mean, Blake's from Belfast to Redcliffe, but it's only half of that.
No, it is that. But
Or
we
it is
can,
all of it.
We can check that we're intending to do all of it. We would need to check on that, but
Yeah, because
we,
you know
we
the
believe our intention and what we've got in there, we will check. But we
yeah,
think
because
it's
the Belfast
just
end's
the
where you're
bit.
going to get the more problems because it's all factories.
Yeah, we'll double check that.
Yeah,
before we
because
do
the
it.
other bit you've left north of Belfast Road, which makes perfect sense and explains that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyrone.
Thank you. So if we were to add another road, could we do it today?
Before we go out for consultation, with these roads, we normally do an assessment process and also check with the police that their views on, because they're the enforcer of the bylaw, so we check whether they are aware of issues or have input into proposing it or not.
So that's a no.
It depends on the road.
if
but we
if
have
were
done
to-
it. We've assessed a whole lot of things. We've gotten input from community boards.
Yeah.
We've had all the roads raised. We've looked at our records of complaints. We've talked to staff that deal with damage to the roads. We've talked to the police, and these are the roads that we're putting forward for recommendation.
Okay,
to
I've just
consult
got to
on.
follow up if that's all right. So if we were to let the report lie on the table, would we be able to bring another road into the report at a you know in the not too distant future?
So the question, I wonder if I could ask a question of Councillor Fields. If the roads have been proposed by the community board, did you take the opportunity to actually input at that stage?
Did I personally? No. So we're acting on new information though. Yeah.
If
I wonder if we can.
Because I am talking about the Summit Road. Yeah.
When I, as councillor for the Kashmir ward, I worked with Andrew Turner, and as in my position as the chair of the Summit Road Authority, I worked with Andrew when we went forward to put the Summit Road in to anti-social behaviour, and I think, and we did break the record for submissions for a day. It was almost just over 900 in a day. They were from all over the world, and it was all against it. There was a very small number for it, so be prepared that if you want to put it up, do talk with the other side of the Hills Community Board, because Sarah's area is connected as well. But it was absolutely amazing and staggering what how many people came forward to say no, that we shouldn't be doing it. It was huge. It was insane.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of people that use it. I mean, it was quite complicated, but Andrew was outstanding working with me with it. But it was actually quite staggering, wasn't it? We worked with police as well. It was staggering.
Yeah, and I understand it was, and I guess, yeah, I mean, this is just exploratory at this point in time, just asking the questions. Yeah.
So don't expect it,
Good background.
What I would say is once the updated bylaw, if it gets put in place, there's nothing stopping us looking at any of the roads any other time. What we're trying to do here is get the bulk of them under the new bylaw in one go. Any other ones in the future will just be an operational matter, and we'll deal with them, consult on them, and bring them to yourselves for approval as needed.
So this is not the
It's not the be all and end all.
be all and end all.
No, it's not as locked
so we
in
can add in.
as
Thank you.
some bylaws, so it's designed to be a bit more flexible in terms of adding and altering roads over time.
'Cause
But we do
otherwise-
need to get the bylaw review completed to comply with the legislative requirements to review it. So while looking at the review, we've looked at the roads and added some where we can.
Thank you.
To update
That's
it.
good. Right. So I've got Kelly.
Yeah, thanks for that. Cypress Road in Linwood would be one that people have come to community board and I think here to talk about. So I just want to highlight that. But just as far as the infringements are concerned, I noticed in 2021 there were 80 something infringements, almost double, treble the next biggest year. In 2017 there's none.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's
Could you
a
explain that a
footnote
bit?
on that. We're not sure why that is. So we went back to the police because that's their data
Yeah.
and their stats, and they weren't sure why they didn't have stats for us for those for that year. But it may be some of those stats might be incomplete as well. So I did caveat that with a footnote. Because we're not confident, because it does seem very odd and unlikely that they would have issued no infringements for that year. I agree.
Okay, just wanted to move along, and I've got two more questions. But just remember here, if we're not careful, we'll spend more time on this than we did on the OPP, and I know what's a lot more important. Aaron.
Well, I was going to, I was happy to move it, but I did want to just make the one amendment to leave Blake's Road unchanged until the next round. So leave it with the tool for police. Are we able to do that? Can we make an adjustment to this?
I'm not sure the police would support it, because what the police don't want is a road where lots of people are using all the time. It makes it harder for them to spot people who are infringing on the notice. I appreciate what you said about people doing burnouts and that type of behaviour. If they're doing that type of behaviour, they'll deal with them anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the roads that we regulate basically remove the opportunity for people to drive on those roads, and that includes all users of the roads. So we only use it where we don't expect people to need to use the road at night.
I think it would almost make it harder to enforce.
Tyler. Lastly, Tyler.
I really appreciate actually adding Weaver Place, just from a personal level. But I was just wanting to ask a question, particularly around the antisocial behaviours, not necessarily the cruising as such. Were there other areas flagged throughout the city that presented the same issues as what Weaver Place did? I know Weaver Place is quite a predominant antisocial area because of the car park by Sockburn Pool.
Not that were raised in the context of the review work that we've been doing, but there are
Okay.
bound to be other areas. Yeah.
Okay, so would it hurt if we, say for example, looked back at this in a year's time to propose something through the community boards?
That's absolutely the route going forward for any.
Okay, so we don't need to
additions or
lock it
alterations.
in a resolution or anything. Okay. No, those are my only questions. Thank you very much.
So we have
Just
a mover and seconder, and I don't think there's any debate. Right, put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. All those against? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Right, moving right along. Okay, so now we're up to item 8, major cycleway South Express, just the detailed traffic resolutions. Mark, you're seconding it?
No surprise.
Good. So we have a happy to mover and a happy to second. Yeah.
Give the officers a break, please.
This may have come to some surprise that Sarah's happy to move this and Mark is happy to second it. So that's good. So there'll be probably very little questions. There isn't. There any? Yes, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this to us. One question I've got is around that troublesome intersection in the middle that we've excluded, and what the way forward is around that intersection going forward. Like, is it likely to...
So as it stands, the project aim is to put the cycleway through that intersection, and that's what we're attempting to do. If you're looking for a bigger, wider intersection upgrade, that's something we'll need to look at in the LTP,
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, the objectives of the project is to get the cycleway through, and that's fundamentally what we're trying to do. The reason it's not in the resolutions today is to do with the integration with Key Rail and what you're looking for in the community board, and trying to find a solution that matches all those things together.
Because what I'm hearing from the community is that they would sooner put the whole cycleway on hold whilst that gets sorted out. Whereas, as a local council, I'm a little more pragmatic on that in a sense that we do need to construct the cycleway because the people in Templeton need it, and we need to connect up what's already been built. But that, of course, does leave that really troublesome little intersection in the middle, which will be needed at some stage for the safety of the cycleway. But please don't lose focus on the fact that we need that whole thing resolved.
Yeah, I mean, we have to get it resolved because the Key Rail issue and the safety of the how close it is to that Key Rail crossing. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron?
Yeah, just quickly, there's a small typo, 6.7 to cycle of walk, should be all walk I'm picking. But on the next one, 6.8, the accessibility considerations, it's more of a point than a question that this is more detailed than we're normally seeing, and the inclusion of the tactile pavers and the audible pedestrian crossings being included in here, rather than previously we've been having reports come through that just says this. It's a cut and paste, and it's great to see staff kind of taking it to the next level and delivering on what we're trying to do in the accessibility thing. So I note that you've gone out of your way and that you're going into the detail now of the accessibility in the past was often, is this accessible, rather than accessibility with a disability lens on, and that's what you're doing now. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. And so with that, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Mayor's monthly report. Sam's happy to move. I'm happy to. Am I allowed to second my own report? I suppose I am. Yeah, Tim, have we any discussion? We've talked one part about the OPP. We've talked that. I think we've done quite well this morning, so it's good. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. So now I'll ask for a go into PX. So
Resolution to exclude.
Kelly, who's first? Sorry. You are. Oh, right. Kelly, second. Okay, thank you.
All those in favour?
All those in favour? Against? Thank you, carried.
Kelly.